Jackson County Budget Committee to order, please. Can we have the roll call?
Budget Member Sevick. Here. Commissioner Daughter. Here. Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Budget Member Stevenson.
Here.
Commissioner Dyer.
Here.
Chair Morris.
Here. Okay, we are now opening for public hearing, and first department up is the airport. Amber, nice to see you this morning.
Good to see you guys too. Good morning, everybody. I'm always happy to be here to talk to you, especially about the airport, and I'm first up, so I know I have a lot more to get to today, so we'll try and make this not too long. Let's see, how do I run this thing? Next, right there. All right, so first of all, let's talk passengers. In 2023, we saw 979,211 passengers come through the airport. That was the, excuse me, fourth most in our history, and 2024 has started off really strong. January through March, we are up actually 10% over last year, which is wonderful, and we hope that this early trend continues throughout the year. If it does, we're on track to be within 2% of our 2019 record. So we're finally back, if you will. This year, actually, in February, exceeded February of 2019 for the month total. That was pretty impressive. First time we've done that, so that was great. As you can see on there, kind of on the right, the charts on the top is the total passengers per fiscal year, and the bottom is the flights per day for fiscal year. So you can see that our passenger numbers really came back and stayed pretty steady. But what's amazing is the drop in the flights per day down to that 2014-15 level. So keeping those passengers high with much fewer flights. And on that note, we still have 12 direct routes to all of those places shown on the map there on the right. Our average load factor is around 83%, so that's pretty decent. We love to see those mid-80 numbers. Higher would be even better. Show the airlines that we need some more service. But less frequency on larger aircraft seems to be the trend nationwide, and Medford is no different. So we are very grateful. Most of you probably know we have a second Portland flight on Alaska Airlines starting October 1st. Super excited about that. Still working always to get new service and increase the service that we have. We have great service, but always working on more. So let's talk about what we got done in 23-24. First off, the picture there on the bottom left shows work on our General Aviation Apron Phase 1 project. That extended our taxiway C down to the north and also built 2 large ramp areas, apron areas there. So now those are done, and we're all ready for private hangars to be built on those sites and develop that general aviation area even further. And then on the right side, you've got kind of a before and after picture there on the top right and the bottom. But that shows the site just south of our operations building. That's where we built a new electrical building there and a generator on the right. You can see that as well on the bottom right. To house all of our runway lighting. If you guys have ever seen the runway at night, you know there's a lot of lights out there. So the electrical building puts that all in one location. Run all new cabling through the airport, and it also allows the tower to control the airfield lighting easier as well, increase the brightness. So that little picture on the top there is what the inside of that building looks like. So it's very clean, very wonderful, wonderful building, and it really increases the efficiency of our crews to operate the airfield and the lighting. Also this year, we're working on our tower. You can see the tower just below that great airplane there on the top right. We are replacing the elevator in that tower, as well as we did the upgrades that connect to the lighting system I previously mentioned. So that turned out well, and always looking for ways to upgrade our tower. But the most important is there, in my opinion, as on the bottom. So you can see that if you drive on the expressway, you've noticed that there's a big swatch of concrete, a lot of concrete. We extended that pad 3 times its normal size. So that allows those very large DC-10 air tankers to operate over there on the east side way more efficiently than they were able to one at a time in the past. So that picture was taken last summer when we had 3 of the DC-10s on the ground. One of them was over on that east ramp to be refueled, and then the other 2, we had to find places for them. And we only have, there's very few sections of the airport where those big heavy planes can be parked. So we found some over there by the tower, and that it works, but it's not as efficient as you would like when time matters, and time matters, as we all know, in fires. So we're excited to have that large ramp operational this summer. We think it'll really greatly increase the efficiency of turning those large aircraft. All of these projects were done with grants, so let's talk about our grants. We have, I'll make sure I get these numbers right, but we have FAA AIP grants. We also have BIL grants, which is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law grants, that helped us with some of these projects, as well as Connect Oregon state grants, Connect Oregon grants, and our core grants. So that is how, those are the grant amounts there on the screen, and that shows how we did all of those projects I just mentioned. Now let's talk about our new stuff, because that's what we're talking about today, is the next year's budget. So part in there includes the phase 2 of our East Apron expansion. That's that blue section on that bottom there. That gives us a 4th parking position. We have room for 3 right now with that apron, with that concrete expansion. This will give us room for a 4th, which would be a large cargo plane or a military plane, as well as circulation for all 4 of those planes to operate over there. In the event of a natural disaster like a Cascadia event, this will be crucial to get supplies and necessary equipment, personnel into the region. So we're really excited to get this project done and appreciate the help from Connect Oregon and the federal government as well on those. And then over on the right is our general aviation expansion. We did phase 1 last year. This is phase 2, which just finishes that parking apron there on the right side of that, if you will, the bottom right of the upper right picture. That will be a parking apron, and then the rest will be development for future hangar builds. So we'll be ready to go for a large general aviation expansion at the airport. And on the bottom is the Northwest Development Project. That extends Taxiway C down to the north end of our airfield where there currently isn't anything. And that will put the infrastructure in place that we can develop that in the future. And the next part of the project and goals for this year is our terminal area plan for expansion. This plan was our first step towards our much anticipated and needed terminal expansion. This picture here is just a conceptual rendering of what it could look like someday when we're done. So fun to look at, not exactly what we're going to be getting. We have not designed this yet or even got that far, just a rendering of what it could look like someday. The financial feasibility analysis is underway right now. That will lead us into the design phase, and then we'll move forward to what it will actually look like in the future. If you get up early and you come out to the airport, you get beautiful sunrises like the one shown there. The airport's total 24-25 budget request is $117,396,545. That includes both operating and non-operating revenue and expenses. So this budget projects that we will receive $21,903,052 in operating revenue, and our projected expenses, operating expenses, are $739,782. So that leaves us a little over $4 million, which we plan on putting in reserves as we continue to save for that upcoming terminal expansion. So where does that operational revenue come from? The airport has 4 separate operating programs, but our money to run all 4 of those programs, this is where we're expecting to get it from. So you can see the pie chart there kind of breaks that down. Other than our COVID reimbursements, the largest single source of our revenue comes from our parking lot. That continues to be true at about 22% this year. So another $5 million roughly comes from the airlines, and other landing fees, so general aviation as well, but mostly from those 6 commercial airlines that operate at the airport. And car rental concessions are expected to come in roughly a little below $2 million. All of the rest of our revenue comes from all those other fun things, such as our fixed base operators, restaurant, gift shop, vending, fuel fees, hangar rentals, advertising, all the other ways that the airport can increase revenue. And on the operational expenses side of the house, that's the just under 18 million there. You can see that most of that is spent in our operations and maintenance department. It's the largest. Increases here are mostly inflationary, really, because we have noticed a great increase in the cost of supplies, parts, equipment, all the things necessary to operate and run the airport. as well as we have some scheduled maintenance projects that are on tap and need to be done as well. One of the things included in that budget that's quite large and unexpected and unusual is a switch over from the firefighting foam that our firefighters use there on the airfield from the PFAS foam to the AFFF, I'm going to get that wrong, fluorine-free foam. It's hard to say. So that's very expensive. So we have a new truck coming, which will be filled with the new foam. Then we will need to clean out the existing trucks and replace them with new foam, which is very expensive. So that's reflected in this as well. The admin, I'm losing my voice. The admin program, our budget is budgeted right at $4 million, $229,721. Increases in that program are mainly due to inflation, higher costs of consultants, contracts, contractual increases, among other things. Our safety and security at $3 million. I am losing my voice. Excuse me. I'm going to borrow some water. Appreciate having it here.
The rest for the sheriff.
You need 3 bottles? 3 or 4 bottles? I'll leave it for him. We'll try and get through one. I apologize. So the safety and security program increases there are for 2 new vehicles. They are the vehicles they currently drive, replacement vehicles, not additional vehicles. They're quite old, and we'll be turning those in and getting 2 new vehicles from Motor Pool. And our diversification program budget is remained basically flat. I think it went up $100. So basically flat, and that's to do work on our the building that houses Frito-Lay and some of those other off-the-airfield properties that we maintain. Our non-operating revenue mostly comes from grants. A large part comes from grants. So that's your AIP, Airport Improvement Program grants, and our BIL, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law grants, as well as Connect State grants, Connect Oregon, Critical Oregon, Airport Relief. That's the core grants that I mentioned. The other sources of non-operating revenue are passenger facility charges, which remain at $4.50 per person. They have been there forever. Someday we hope Congress raises those because $4.50 doesn't cover near as much as it used to, as we all know. And our customer facility charges are $3 per transaction day, and that's a rental car fee. That's really the highlights of what we have going, so I wanted to leave plenty of room for you guys to ask me any questions you might have.
Thank you, Amber. It was a good presentation. Appreciate it. So I just wanted to ask you to clarify a little bit, just for the general public, on the 3 projects that you've highlighted in your presentation, just exactly where the funds are coming from for those projects.
Oh, sure. See, I think we had that on a slide. Oh, for this yeah, it's probably not on that slide. Most of those for the GA Phase 2, we'll start there. GA Phase 2 is a discretionary ask of the FAA. So it's going to be part entitlement money that we get every year, and the rest of that is the discretionary ask. It's actually a $3 million discretionary ask. So if we don't get those funds from the federal government, that part of the project won't happen. It's a discretionary ask. If we do, we'll do the entire Phase 2 build out. If we don't, we'll either do a redesigned smaller portion with the entitlements, or we will wait and try again for discretionary in a coming year. The East Apron is also an FAA entitlements. It's a lot of airport cash to finish that project as well. And hopefully we did put in a request for a Connect Oregon grant on that project as well. So we'll see if we get that. We do, yay. If not, it will be a little more airport cash to finish that up. And the third project is the Northwest Development. That is all that's all entitlement AIP money as well. We had some carried over, and that is what it's being used for. So most of that is grant funded, with a very small match for the airport on the strict AIP projects. They cover 93.75% of the project, and we cover the other 6.25%.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Committee members.
Yeah, just a quick question about the new foam that obviously is extremely expensive and expensive to transition over to it. Has there been any information, studies, anything about it? Is it as effective? Is it less effective than in fighting fires in the old foam?
Yeah, that topic came up at a recent FAA conference that we were at in Seattle. A good discussion about that. Some airports have transitioned already. Very few, actually 3. 3 have transitioned already, but some have, and they have found that it does work. they think is effectively. They really have limited data on that right now, but hopefully it does.
Okay.
That's kind of the message was we hope it does. It works. They're just not sure the long term, like does it initially puts the fire out, but does it keep the fire out? Those things haven't been tested yet. Still early. We didn't jump on this super early. We've been working with the Port of Portland and their fire department who is working on transitioning. We're going to kind of see lessons learned from some of these places and kind of ease into this a little bit slowly with best practices as we know them at the time when we're going to make this switch this year. But we have to make it, so.
Right. I'll be looking for some more definitive
Yeah.
information and studies on that, hopefully.
Yeah, me too. Right now, I think there's 2, possibly a third has been approved type of the new foam. But still, there's very limited, it's new, very limited.
Thank
More to
you.
come.
Yeah, Matt?
Much revenue coming from parking because
Everybody hear that? Okay, we good? Okay, so he asked about parking. Yes, parking is, right now, we average around 60% full for the year, which is really the sweet spot to be in. We only go into overflow once, possibly twice a year still. We do have overflow available. So along with the expansion will probably come the parking garage. It is on the longer term CIP. So probably looking at a parking garage in the future. Not quite there yet. At the 60% mark, the parking consultants were like, you're in the sweet spot. Don't mess with that right now. We will have to probably inch up parking rates over the next couple of years, 2, 3, maybe even 5 years, to cover increasing costs in the parking lot, increasing credit card fees, increasing everything else. But hopefully with that and our other ground transportation options, we can continue to meet those needs of the traveling public. And if we need to move the parking garage up, we will.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Amber.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. Next up is the sheriff. Morning, Nate.
Good morning. I get my water ready. All right, good morning. Chair Morris, members of the Budget Committee, Commissioners, Mr. Jordan. Thank you for the opportunity to talk here today and talk a little bit about our budget request and some of the accomplishments of the Sheriff's Office over the past year. We talk about our statistics that I'll show you this morning, bar graphs, numbers. Those are for calendar year 2023. I realize that we're on a fiscal year. But because of the way statistics are compiled, it's much easier for us to give you the past year because we wouldn't obviously have the statistics for the end of this fiscal year quite yet. I'd like to start our presentation with our mission and value statement. This is the what guides our service delivery to the community that we serve. It guides how we hire. It guides our promotional processes, how we review incidents at our office for accountability. It really is the path that we try to use when measuring all things done by the Sheriff's Office. My goals, I've had these goals since I've been the sheriff, and they continue to be my goals as a sheriff, and that is to improve safety and livability in Jackson County. We want to maintain the public's trust, maximize our resources. I know that resources are precious, and while we could always use more, we're very thankful for what we get, and so we try to make the most use out of those. And of course, be the best sheriff's office in the state of Oregon. There's no measurement for this, but we always talk about it at our office, and we encourage each and every person in every position to do their best, striving to make our office the best in the state of Oregon. And I believe that we are there, and I think I have some things to show you that we do meet this mark, but again, we'll always strive to be better. All right, some accomplishments for 2023. Keeping the jail open was a big accomplishment in 2023. We had some significant staffing issues throughout the year due to various reasons, attrition, turnover, losing people to other police agencies out of our corrections division, just a lot of things going on. And, a team effort kept the jail open all year. Patrol, admin, everybody that was sworn, I think did shifts, including myself in the jail over the past year to keep the doors open. So that was a big accomplishment. With that, we hired 43 employees in 2023, 31 full-time and 12 extra help. That's a significant undertaking for our office to hire a full-time sworn or criminal records possession. You know, there's the application process, there's a testing process, interview process, physical fitness test, psychological exam, medical exam. So a lot of work goes into hiring individuals. So it's quite an effort by our admin team. I'm quite proud of the work we did there. You look at that, it's almost one a week over the course of the year. And of course, the goal of getting it up to staffing is to reduce overtime, which was a factor in some people leaving the corrections division last year, I believe. You know, we continue to emphasize relationships in our community with those we serve, with our criminal justice partners, with social service providers. We're working on creating a program currently within our jail to help you know, people transition from custody back into, you know, society. And so we're really working on trying to figure out ways to make the best use of our facility, and knowing that our jail underserves our community for various reasons, mainly due to size. And so we're trying to think of ways outside the box to reduce recidivism. The Greenway has improved throughout the county. Now, Medford PD certainly has a lion's share of the Greenway issues within their city. They've done a fantastic job, but we also have individuals who focus on the Greenway weekly, working with MPD as a partner and other agencies to ensure we're not just moving the issues back and forth across the Greenway, but I think that if you've taken a look, you've seen some pretty significant improvements in how the appearance of the Greenway, and our goal is to make it more usable for our community. This past year, we implemented additional leadership in the Corrections Bureau, something that we identified as a need in our last year's presentation, and we're able to get that done. Just with all the things that go on within the jail, it's like a small city at times. We felt like one piece that we wanted to focus on more was leadership and career development, and I think we were able to do that with adding a position in our lieutenant ranks this year. So we're proud of that. Reduce fatal crashes in our jurisdiction. So across the county, as you know, there's state roads, there's municipalities, and then there's county roads. And the overall number of fatals went up by 1 from last year in our county, but on the roads that JCSO has primary patrol responsibility for, they went down. So we're proud of that as well. And part of that reason is our emphasis on DUI enforcement. This past year, our agency was recognized as the DUI Enforcement Agency of the Year by the DUI Multidisciplinary Task Force, which is a pretty big accomplishment, looking at all the cities, state, and county entities across the state. So we were picked as the winner of that award, and a lot of that has to do with how many DUI arrests we made, but it also encompasses the educational efforts we put forward and the awareness and whatnot. So we focus on all of those when we talk about reducing fatal crashes and DUI incidents. We were short-staffed in our records for this year as well, 2023. Despite that, we maintained a high level of service. Our CHL division we're about 10 days out, meaning so somebody gets online, they can schedule an appointment to have their CHL renewed within 10 days. That was as of yesterday, and that's a pretty tall order, considering, you know, not too many years ago we were months behind. So our team has done a fantastic job in keeping the efficiency up and providing that service to the public. And of course, our records division, you know, had a very small error rate. The national standard is 4%, and they were 0.03% error rate. So the data they're entering is well done and accurate, which is very important because, as you know, data in helps us do our jobs on the back end of that. So we're proud of their efforts. Correctional facility, again, we talked about the short staff, but we had dozens of people who had their lives saved by our staff in the jail this year. Fentanyl, as you know, is plagued our nation and our community as well. It's very easy to smuggle into the jail, and our staff has responded to numerous overdoses where they've had to render aid, Narcan, and perform life-saving measures on inmates who were overdosing. We've also had some suicide attempts, so a great job by our jail staff keeping people in custody safe. So you look at this is a current snapshot. Usually I do this at the end, but I decided to move it up for a little perspective. We've been short all year. We told you we've hired 43 people. 31 of those were full-time FTEs. We're 14 positions down right now, but as of July 1, we'll be 10 down because we're losing 4 FTE, and I'll talk about that in the budget. But so we've done a pretty good job, and we have a plan that we could hire several of those in June. So by the end of the fiscal year, we could be very close to full. Corrections Bureau, so I'd like to just kind of show the workflow. Lodgings this year were almost 10,000, so it's creeping back up every year. As you can see, things changed in the pandemic, and of course then Measure 110 in 2021. I think that has a lot to do with some of the reduction in lodging numbers, but you can see that we're still very busy. I'll show you a comparison across the state. We had 2,700 forced releases, but the number that you're seeing there does not include Senate Bill 48 releases, which is in your packet that you've got in the budget packet itself. And that was about another 1,300 individuals who were released under Senate Bill 48. Senate Bill 48 was legislation passed, I think, a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago. And basically, there are certain crimes that we are not able to hold in custody. Usually low-level crimes, non-person crimes, but it is not allowed by law for us to hold them in jail unless there's some other criteria, like maybe they're suicidal or highly intoxicated. But once those things are ferreted out, we have to let them go. And to give you an example, just last night, we had an individual who was released under Senate Bill 48, and came right over to our courthouse here and either made entry or attempted to make entry and was lodged again within, I think, a half hour. So it is an impact. It's in our county, it hasn't been, I guess, that much of an impact because of our jail space. Most of those individuals would have been released anyway, but it is another thing to consider. We look across the state, our jail was, I think, the 4th busiest. The only bigger jail I don't have on there is Multnomah because they're considerably bigger than our county. But you can see we were the, with Multnomah included, we'd be the 4th busiest jail, and we're the 6th most populated county. So we're pretty busy. We're always fighting outside of our weight, so to speak, our weight class. Here's a snapshot of beds, total beds that our comparable counties have. And I say comparable, actually Deschutes County is the closest county in size to us. The rest are considerably bigger when you talk about like the largest 7 counties population-wide. But with total bed space, you know, we're the 7th smallest out of the 7 counties. And again, Multnomah was not up there. And then of course beds in use, and then average daily population there. When you look at that, you know, you can see that we're very busy, busier than most jails that are considerably bigger. And then of course you look at, you know, budget allocation. Again, we're very thankful for the budget that we have here. We understand the limitations that we have as a county with regards to tax base. But you can look at some of these counties. We have a significantly smaller budget for jail services. And I think this is why it's important when we want to go out and explain this to the voters, when we potentially have the opportunity to, you know, ask for additional jail space through a service district and bond. Warrants and failed to appear. Just to give you an idea, I really believe that this number coincides with bed space. In 2015, we had to reduce jail capacity due to staffing. Our jail was closed for most of 15, 16, and part of 17. Then we opened it back up. And then you can see the numbers trend down. Of course, in the pandemic, we had to reduce bed space. We didn't close our facility, but due to social distancing, we had to reduce how many people were kept within our county jail. And you can see that the graphs trend back up. And then we opened the jail fully in 2022 again, near the end of 22, and we're already seeing some reductions in our warrants and failed to appear. So bed space is very important to our criminal justice system. And warrants take a big toll of our work too. You know, when somebody comes in on a warrant, you know, they're arrested by patrol, whatever a city, municipality, state, county. They come into the jail, they're released, they're given a court date, they don't appear, the courts have to do the paperwork, and then it goes to the records divisions to be entered, and then the cycle starts over and over again. So it is a considerable, I guess, use of resources to process all those warrants. You see our CHL, again, most of the year we had one person working in our CHL division full-time because of the staffing shortages, and she did a fantastic job. Numbers are pretty consistent with years prior, but we're still certainly providing a good service to the public. Patrol, Here's our calls for service for agencies. You can see pretty consistent with last year, slightly down, 500 or so calls. So not significant difference, or 700 calls, not a significant difference. What I do like is the trend lines. The gold graph is our self-initiated activity versus our dispatch-initiated activity. Hopefully that will continue next year, but that I feel when our officers, deputies are able to be proactive, that's a positive, and where they're able to follow up on calls. So for instance, if a burglary comes in, that's a 911 call or a non-emergent call that's dispatched to our deputies. And then any subsequent follow-up they're able to do on those calls would be self-initiated. So that means they have a little bit of time to follow up on cases, which is a good thing. And here's what I talked about with our motor vehicle accidents. As you can see, we're one higher in the county overall from last year, but in the jurisdiction that we are responsible for patrolling, you can see we're down 3 fatal motor vehicle crashes this past year, so that's a positive, and then 5 of those were impaired. So I think that's good progress, and hopefully that will continue to trend. I know our team was very diligent, and we're planning on adding some more drug recognition experts to deal with some of the increased driving while impaired under the influence of drugs, and of course Measure 110 is partly responsible for that. We improved our response times this past year. Overall, the green graph is all calls for service. We were able to drop that by almost 6 minutes. So that's something that we continually strive to improve on, because when people call, we want to handle their call as fast as we can. But when you look at the emergencies, which is the black bar graph, we were down almost a minute and a half in our response time, so that's good. And of course, the priority ones is the gold graph, which is the next highest level of calls, and we dropped our response times there too. So we'll continually work on that, but that is an area that we strive to improve on. Criminal investigations, our detectives are very busy. Last year, 2023, they took 105 cases versus 64 in 2022 and 38 in 2021. So very busy. Talk about Measure 11 crime, that's our more serious crime. We had a significant increase in Measure 11 lodgings in our jail, so that would be countywide, starting in 2021, 22, and 23. And those cases generally, not always, are investigated by detectives, but they are generally assigned, and that number is consistent with what we're seeing being lodged in our jail. Just to give you an idea, prior to the pandemic, we had about 153 lodgings in our jail for Measure 11 in 2019. We're making good progress, I think, with the criminal justice system and all the things that we're doing as a team here. And then last year we had 325 lodgings, so over double what was in 2019. And the year before that we had 363 Measure 11 lodgings in 2022. So significantly busier. And since Measure 110, we've seen huge spikes in the Measure 11 lodgings in our jail. Special victims, and those generally are going to be crimes against juveniles or elderly. They took 185 cases this past year, so very busy. That number is close to being on par with what we did the year before, maybe just a little bit higher. Our SOSET team, which focuses on child exploitation, generally child pornography or internet crimes over the internet. Very busy this year, did some great work, 47 cases with 8 arrests, but identified 24 victims who are currently in abusive situations, so we're proud of that. Our print lab had 138 cases, so I'm sure you've known this over the years, but we actually have our own fingerprint lab at the Sheriff's Office. We have one person working in that lab, and that gives us a level of ability to analyze fingerprints taken from crime scenes or trying to identify somebody who might be deceased and we don't know who they are much quicker than we can get through the state lab, where we might wait months or even up to a year for results back from the state police crime lab. We can get them in days in our office, so it provides a great service to our community. Our illegal marijuana eradication team was very busy last year. Now, we've made great progress, I think, in the marijuana overall, in the illegal black market marijuana. We don't have the supersized grows that we had a few years ago. The team's been really working hard. Those involved in the black market have changed tactics. They're using smaller grows. So we actually wrote more search warrants in 2023 than we did in 22 or 21 because the locations are smaller Still pretty pervasive, but it looks a lot better and it feels a lot better. And I think the impact to the environment is different now. I think we've made improvements there into our water use. So we're proud of that work, and we're going to continue doing that. We just got notified yesterday that our grant funding was approved to keep us solvent through 2025, which is good news for our team. And our high-tech crimes, this is the team. It's a task force county with MPD, ourselves, state police, HHS, and or HSI, I'm sorry, and they do the computer forensics work, so cell phones, computers that are seized, which is a pretty significant portion of all major cases nowadays due to the technology. Very busy. And you can see 74 of the cases that they took are just from SOSET and STAR, which is our accident and reconstruction team. Medical examiner, we run a pretty unique program in Jackson County. It's probably one of the most unique in the states and probably one of the most robust for sure. I think the only other county that does it similar to us is Douglas. We have 3-time investigators assigned to our medical examiner team because of how busy we are. But you can see they took in 362 cases. They had 863 referrals. But you look at the overdoses, those are the significant numbers on the yellow bar graph. This year was the worst year that we've had, about 120. That number could change slightly as we get more toxicology results, but a pretty significant increase since Measure 110 in 2021. In fact, we were almost double each year. This year, almost triple of what our prior high number was, so pretty significant. Okay, now to the money part of this. Our total budget request is $43,595,877. As you can see, a majority of our expenses goes for personnel. Just over $30 million of it just goes to pay for our personnel, with $13,440,733 for the materials and services, so our vehicles and all the equipment and things that we need to keep the doors open, the lights on, and our deputies going to calls and keeping adults in custody at the jail. With revenues and income, we get about $12 million, just over $12 million, with most of our funding coming from the general fund. So our budget increase this year over last, our request is about just over $2.7 million. So it's always interesting. We got a pretty significant increase, what I would say, and I'm thankful for that. But we had to reduce FTEs overall, and I think that's just a testament to the cost of doing business right now, inflation, personnel costs, and everything else. So the majority of our budget ask, the increase from last year goes to personnel services, 76%. And then the rest is, I think, directly related to inflation. Adult and custody medical up 7%. However, that could even change yet again because we just got notified that WellPath is going to be wanting to either get a whole bunch more money, and that's who provides our medical services in the jail, or we're going to look at a different option. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But of course, insurance, materials, and services are up, motor pool's up, and even meals for adults in custody. So a lot of things related to inflation, I believe. When you look at how we're funded, 72% of the Sheriff's Office budget comes from general fund. And the others is contracts, grants, so IMET money, Shady Cove contract, BLM, Forest Service, things of that nature. Fees and other charges, only 1% of our budget, and then the interfund transfer, which is going to be the district from White City. So White City has a service district where they pay for enhanced law enforcement. That's transferred to our budget, and then we pay for sheriff's deputies and staff to patrol White City. Just another way to look at our budget overall. When you look at how it's broken down, corrections is the big chunk by itself, with 40% of our budget. Criminals 35%, White City 5%, admin 6%, support services 5%, search and rescue 2%, and IMET 7%. Again, another way to just look at data, because I know everyone processes it slightly different, but criminal sworn, so the individuals who are working the street or detectives, driving the cars, 73. Corrections sworn is 64, and then non-sworn support staff, so records and all that, 53 individuals. And then this graph aligns with E1. I will not go through all of that, but just so you can see it and have a visual about how many FTEs are in each division, which then relates to the bureaus I'll talk about in a second. So our Corrections Bureau, again, 84 FTEs total, responsible for, obviously, the lion's share is supervising adults in custody, but they also do prisoner transport, corrections records, court security. The department training coordinators, FTE, is allocated to the Corrections Bureau. Of course, leadership management and then identifying additional leadership was important because the medical contract, food vendors, commissary, phones, employee development are all things that take a lot of time, and that was a big task for one lieutenant and a captain. Support Services Bureau, and this is going to be our records and detectives and Marine Patrol, so just basically everything that's not responding to the direct calls for service as far as the day-to-day our patrol. All the specialty units, and we're part of the MADGE team. We talked about the SOSET and high-tech crimes, but and IMED is a multi-agency task force as well. So a lot of partnerships through the Support Services Bureau, and that's 52.3 of our FTE. Operations Bureau, now this is, like I said, the green and whites, our K-9, contracts with Shady Cove, White City Enhanced District, our school safety position, all that, basically the ones that are wearing uniforms and going to calls and patrol in the county are within the Operations Bureau. Force Administration, 7.6 FTEs, full-time employees, responsible for the overall operations, supervision, and management of the Sheriff's Office and all the other agencies that we have to interact with, DPSST, accreditation, things of that nature. And again, big task for them. Background investigators were very busy this past year with doing all the hiring. I want to talk a little bit about what we are anticipating for 2024 or the next fiscal year, both. Measure 110 reform, as you know, the governor signed a piece of legislation a couple weeks ago, I believe, and so there's going to be some changes coming to 110. And I just wanted to talk about how that might impact the Sheriff's Office a little bit and maybe some of our other criminal justice partners. Lodgings likely to increase starting in September, so luckily we have some time to ramp up because that's when individuals will be able to be arrested or lodged for possession. We could see an increase in lodgings in our jail. It's very likely that we will, since we saw a pretty significant reduction post Measure 110. So we'll have to be ready for that. Again, as our jail is under-resourced and undersized for our valley, it's going to further exacerbate those issues for sure. We had to reduce 2 record staff in our jail due to budget. Obviously we're going to evaluate that was the best place to make those cuts as we move on, obviously. But with increased lodgings and some of the work regarding 110, we may have to revisit where those cuts come from to make sure we can handle the workload. We're also anticipating potential further reductions in FTEs the following year. We're going to do some budget analysis and work with the county, but it's predicted that based on the cost of doing business that we could lose additional FTE, and that would impact services as well. When we're busier, our DA's office is busier. They have to prosecute the cases that we make arrests on, or generally prosecute most of the cases, depending on the circumstances. And that's going to be extra work for them. And then, of course, in our county, we're seeing a significant issue with public defenders. We have one of the most significant problems in the state of Oregon with regards to unrepresented people who have been charged with crimes. We add a bunch of arrests, which is likely post Measure 110. That's only going to further exacerbate that problem as well. So we're going to have to come together as a team and see how we handle that. But just let you know, foreshadowing, those are things that we see with the 110 stuff. There is some grant funding available, but it's not that significant. Obviously, we're in conversations with Health and Human Services, Community Justice, our DA's office, our other law enforcement partners is the best way to start a program, like a deflection program is what they call it, which would maybe alleviate some of the need for jail space and direct people into treatment. So those talks are ongoing, but they're just beginning. We don't have a lot of detox facilities in Jackson County, so that's an issue as well. There's not a lot of places for people to go who are impaired or under the influence, which does result in, jail use at times for low-level crimes if somebody is impaired or intoxicated. Another thing that's going to impact the sheriff's office and our municipalities is the expungement process. There's some expungement requirements under the new legislation and some pretty strict timelines on how that's done, which will impact our records division. So again, once this is up and running, we kind of are able to see what the workloads are. It could force us to move additional resources into our records division to be compliant with the expungement process. And of course, jail, medical issues within the jail are going to be more frequent. People who are detoxing from drugs are often in fragile states, and that's going to require more supervision, more medical services. And just to give you an idea, Clackamas County, one of our partners, they have a pretty robust intake, and they found about 50% of their intakes up there were going to be needing detox services if they stayed in their facility. And I think we're not much further off. We just don't have quite as a robust program of intake. And I talk about some of these things that are going. So challenges and goals moving forward. I talk a lot about the challenges that we see, but our goals here are to overcome these and to try to make things work the best that we can. So budget constraints, again, due to inflation, cost of doing business. Again, we're thankful for our increase for sure, but things just cost more money. I think we're seeing that everywhere. So we did lose 4 FTE in this budget. We're asking for 4 less. And it's anticipated that we could see a similar reduction the following year or maybe a little more, depending on how things look. So that's going to be a challenge to overcome for sure. And depending on, how our outlooks and predictions are, we may have to leave vacancies open sooner than next year just so we don't have an issue with running out of budget funding. So it could impact services sooner than even next year. But despite that, we're going to find ways to be efficient and do our best and hopefully minimize any impacts to the community. Jail medical services couldn't cost significantly, like I talked about with WellPath. We're working with the county currently, our county partners, Health and Human Services, and to see the best way to address this cost. But just to be completely transparent, we already don't have enough bed space. Depending on costs and how things are lined up, it could reduce a reduction of bed space to afford medical services. It could require a request of funds from the reserves to maintain those services. And then, of course, the option we're looking at is does the county take over medical services and try to do that for a more reasonable cost. So those are things we're working on currently, but could come up moving forward. Like I said, I'm happy we just got our marijuana funding approved, so we're solvent through 2025, December of 2025. But we will definitely be requesting additional funds at the end of this year and into next year during the regular session to keep that team at least partially funded as much as we can, because I think it's so important to keep a presence and have the ability to respond so the black market doesn't become pervasive again as it was in 2021. So we'll be working on that for sure. And I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to be able to do that. Jail, as you know, is a big thing. Funding the jail, too small of a jail. So we're going to be working very diligently over the next year to hopefully be able to get something to our voters. In May of 25 is my goal for a service district and bond to afford a new facility, which is desperately needed in our county, and additional space and resources for some of the medical issues. We anticipate a lot of retirements in 2025, so we're working diligently on a succession plan and how that may look. And so that's going to be on the forefront to make sure that as people retire, that's where we're anticipating the vacancies and whatnot, that we have leadership ready to go and come up into the ranks and continue to keep the sheriff's office moving in a forward direction. And again, of course, Measure 114 is still looming in the courts. I think Mr. Jordan mentioned this in his budget address. We don't know where that's going to be, but it would be a significant impact on our sheriff's office if that were to go into effect. And it's certainly a shift in resources to make sure we're able to provide the service necessary for the community. So I'll definitely keep the committee posted on that, but that would be a significant change in service delivery potentially. Okay. I think I made my time limit, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate. As
questions?
always, your presentation is very thorough, and I especially appreciate the data that you always provide us. It very significantly demonstrates the outstanding performance of you and your officers in their duties. One of the things that I'd like to highlight that typically doesn't get highlighted in your presentation is the complexity of your budget. And I don't mean that just from the development of the budget, but the ongoing management of your budget can be extremely challenging. You have lots of moving pieces that are constantly changing position during the course of the year. And so my compliments to you and your staff for doing outstanding job in regards to managing your budget over the years.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a great team. Sue Watkins right there. She's been our primary budget guru for as long as I've been the sheriff, and she's one of our retirements this year, so we're going to miss her for sure. And Jacob has volunteered to take that piece over, so this is his first budget cycle, and he did a great job. So thank you for the compliments. But they're doing awesome work.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, there was a lot of information, and I kind of, one jumped out at me that I thought was pretty impressive, and I'm curious, the calls for service versus self-initiated, it's almost 50-50. So officers, deputies are out on the streets, I guess the perception is that they are, again, intervening on about half the reported crime, which I think obviously is a huge advantage to actually mitigate the damages, and also just the fact that we're out there patrolling. How does that compare, though, to other jurisdictions, other counties? Are we doing, it seems like that's a pretty good number.
Yeah, you know, the jail is an easy thing to compare to because it's fairly standardized with jail standards, and the jail commanders and the jail command council over the years has done a really good job of collecting data very closely to doing it the same way across the state. So data is easy to compare. The patrol side isn't as organized with sheriff's offices. We don't have a hub as the jail command council does to look at data that way. Now I could go find it, but it would be pretty laborious to go to each sheriff's office and ask them for all their data versus what I get from the jail is a spreadsheet where I get all these numbers. So I have encouraged through the Sheriff's Association that maybe the patrol council looks at the jail to maybe standardize some of the data so we could look at that. But I think we're, from what I can see, is that we're pretty busy down here, very busy. You know, I don't know where we would rank with other sheriff's offices, because then you start looking at you know, how many patrol people you have versus calls for service. And, you know, some places have more, like Deschutes County. They have a lot of resources compared to us across the board, more jail space, more jail deputies, more patrol deputies. And so, you know, you look at their calls for service, it may be more calls because they have way more people working. But yeah, I can maybe work on that next year.
It just seems like it's a good gauge on how proactive we are. And again, I would think a self-initiated contact is going to result in a much better outcome generally than when you just respond to something that's already happened. And
yeah, the team did a really good job this year. And again, like I really like to see that number higher than our dispatch calls, because like I said, it does make a difference if we're catching somebody who might be impaired driving before they crash, right? It's a lot less resources for two deputies to deal with than the STAR team, and then you have a tragedy potentially. So that's a testament to the work being done out there. And then there's all the others, and I anticipate with 110 changing that there'll even be opportunities for more intervention, hopefully with detecting crime at lower levels before it becomes more problematic for our community.
thank you.
Yeah, Colleen?
I have a quick question. As Measure 110 and you're planning for these changes, because Measure 110, as it was intended, people would go to treatment. Of course, that didn't happen. And so with the changes and with us possibly looking at detox facilities and deflection, and I'm just asking of your understanding of the changes of Measure 110 and the definition of deflection, is that going to be also voluntary, or will that be more, is that definition court ordered or judge ordered? Do you see it?
There's a couple different processes, and I think, you know, our DA could talk probably a little bit better to some of it than I can, because it's going to be more involved in the courts and the prosecutions. But the deflection is meant to be prior to an arrest. so to speak. So there are opportunities post-arrest for things, conditional discharge and whatnot, and different avenues through the system. But deflection would be, for example, a real simplistic example. A deputy pulls over somebody or makes contact with somebody they're found to be in possession of a small amount of drugs. They would offer them, hey, we can do two things, jail or citation or deflection. If you enter into deflection and you follow through, you won't be charged criminally. And so there's that, right? That's the intent of deflection, is to keep people from entering into the criminal justice system. It's a little more complex than that because we still have to write reports, we still have to document, because if that person doesn't follow through, then the thought is, that there would be charges later. So we have to work out all of the minutia and how that will work. But yes, deflection would be prior to an arrest. And then of course, then there's things that are post-arrest. And again, Beth would be a better person to answer those than I would. But there are avenues throughout this process, the reform of 110, that people can enter into programs and basically get the charges removed from their record and whatnot, and enter into treatment.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a comment. Yeah, and going off of what Craig and Colleen had just talked about, listening to this now, I look at this and I just kind of ask myself the question whether or not the legislature considers the increased costs and the increased budget complexity for you when they make changes to these laws. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's very clear that this increases your costs and your complexity. So, but I'm just musing out loud on that one.
And there is some funding available for some of the deflection stuff. So there'll be some dollars there that I think that we'll be looking at applying for as a county. And as anything, there's a cost of doing business. The cost of Measure 110 is, or what got changed when the voters passed it, is pretty profound as well. The cost of the community, the crime, the overdose deaths, the investigations, the Measure 11. So our hope is while it may cost us a little bit to do business with the reform, or we have to allocate resources, is that the impact to the community will be better overall. Maybe we can reduce some of these overdose deaths. Maybe we can reduce some of the violent crime. Maybe we can, not have Oregon be this place where people are coming to use drugs and have a free-for-all. So maybe on the back end, hopefully there's improvement, and that's what we're hoping for. Long-term cost reductions, I think.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our district attorney. Morning, Beth.
Good morning, everyone. This is my 12th budget presentation and my last budget presentation to this group. I am going to retire in January of 25, so
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you.
It's a job I highly recommend.
Excellent, excellent. So, but thank you again for giving me the opportunity to talk about my office. I'm very proud of my office. I think we've done a really great job and dealt with a lot of difficulties and still hopefully provided a pretty seamless service to our community in Jackson County. So this is our staff in front of the building. Our mission statement, again, that's something that we do take very seriously. We are trying to pursue justice, and we remind each other of that every day when I talk to my deputies and when we talk to each other about how to resolve cases. We are not an office that just believes that we should incarcerate everyone regardless. We really look at the merits of our cases as well as the impacts it's going to have on the community and on the offender themselves. Our overall budget, our revenue, Again, we don't have much that we charge for, so our revenue is $1.7 million and some difference there. Our general fund target was $6,542,971, and our total expenditures $8,324,687. We have 54 employees in our office. We have 23 positions for attorneys, so when we're fully staffed, that makes us the largest law office in Jackson County. We currently have 16 attorneys, but although that sounds like quite a reduction, we've done some creative things to make up for that. So we have 2 part-time, very experienced lawyers from the community that we lured out of retirement to come back and work for us part-time. And they're covering a lot of administrative duties. One of those is covering our grand jury for us, and the other one is covering arraignments for us. And so that frees up the lawyers that are left to actually work on cases and not have as many administrative functions. And we have 2 new attorneys coming out of law school that have accepted jobs with us that start both in August after they take the bar. So we're very hopeful for those 2 new attorneys and bring their energy coming to the office. And so that will bring us closer to being fully staffed. Not quite there yet, but we have had more interest. I think last time I spoke about how when we would post jobs, we just weren't getting applicants. And for whatever reason, we are now seeing a lot more applicants when we post our positions. And so that I'm very thankful for that. And I think we're getting some really great candidates. We have 3 distinct departments in the district attorney's office. And so the first one is the criminal division, and I'll talk just a little bit about some of our accomplishments in the criminal division. We filed 5,674 criminal cases with the court in a timely manner. We're a busy office. That's a large number for the size of our community and the size of our office. We participate in a number of alternative court programs that we have. So wellness court is what used to be called mental health court. Now it's called wellness court. Recovery opportunity court is our rock court or drug court. And then the 416 program is a court that we work in conjunction with community justice. And so with all 3 of those programs, we're getting folks who, in the mental health court especially, who really shouldn't be necessarily in the criminal justice system, but there's no place else that is going to handle the cases. And so working with them on guardianships, on civil commitments sometimes, and sometimes they're going up to the state hospital. So really working with them on all kinds of things. And our recovery opportunity court is a court that really focuses with where you have a relationship with a judge. The offender has a relationship with the judge, sees the same judge every week or every other week, and really develops a relationship with that team, and we participate in that. And then the 416 program, again, with community justice, where we're identifying folks who we think with some enhanced supervision could avoid going to prison and be successful in our community. And so those are the ones that we're working on. We have a new program that we're just starting to work with Resolve on that would target the 18 to 25-year-old or 18 to 24-year-old person who's their first experience into the adult criminal justice system, to try to give them additional services and hopefully get them to choose a different path and not continue in the criminal justice system. We have done some work working with the court and the public defenders to talk about our backlog of unrepresented folks, and that's really not an area that is the district attorney's responsibility, but as a community partner, we can't just put our head in the sand. We've got to try to figure out what kinds of things we could do to make this a little bit better, and I talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. So just a snapshot of a particular day. So on March 18th, we had over 1,000 defendants who were sitting on a list waiting to be assigned an attorney for their case. Jackson County has the worst issue with this in the whole state. And so that is a lot of folks. Some of those folks have been waiting for more than 6 months for an attorney on their case. Most of those are low-level cases, fortunately. So we've worked really hard to try to get attorneys on our more serious cases and been fairly successful with that. But we also had 30 to 40 defendants in custody without an attorney on about 60 cases. And they were in custody. So we're waiting for a federal case to come down. And when that comes down, we're going to have a deadline of a certain amount of days, and we don't know for sure what the federal court's going to do. But if we have if it's 10 days, if you don't get them a lawyer in 10 days, they're going to be released. And it doesn't apply to murder charges, but you could have a lot of really serious people who, if we aren't getting them a lawyer within whatever that number is that the feds are going to announce to us, the federal court, we could have people out in our community that we've so far avoided having out in the community. And so the court, public defenders are really working on that. The legislature's added more funds, more positions, but it's taking time to fill them, and it's just not working quite as quickly as anybody would like to see. So we'll kind of stay tuned for that and see what happens. Another snapshot just for what's happening in our office on a given day. So this was March 25th. We had 3,061 active cases in our office being prosecuted on that day. So those aren't cases that are on warrant status or anything else. Those are cases that are either appearing for arraignment, set it for trial, or have some other kind of court appearance scheduled. Our victim assistance folks were working with 1,881 victims on that date. Those are, again, open cases that they're actively working with those victims on. Expungements, you heard from the sheriff, it's an issue for everyone in the criminal justice system. And on that particular day, we had 513 expungements. Over the last 3 years, expungements have just exploded. The legislature has made it easier and easier for people to expunge. Measure 110 has additional deadlines now with expungement and timelines, so it's going to continue to be an issue for us. There were 12 pending clemencies. That number has at least come down. When our previous governor was leaving office, that number was very high because a lot of people were applying for clemency. We haven't had very many clemencies granted by our new governor, so I think that has deterred people from taking that approach. Active child support cases we had in the office was 2,163. And on that particular day, there were 208 cases on the docket. So that's 208 court appearances. That could be arraignment, that could be a trial, that could be motions, that could be pretrials. So just all kinds of things that are going on of court appearances that we have to cover with our attorney staff. We do actively participate in the task forces, and the sheriff talked about a few of those. So the Medford Area Drug and Gang Enforcement MADGE is our drug team. We have a deputy assigned to that who works closely with those task force members. Basically, we're really working in these task force in advance of the case being submitted to our office. And so we're involved in the actual cases that are happening, developing those cases, trying to help with what kinds of information we're going to need for prosecution to make the strongest case. We have an attorney assigned to the Interagency Marijuana Enforcement Team, IMET. We had a short period of time when we really couldn't staff that, but fortunately it was in a time when they were slower for the weather conditions. And so we now have an attorney back in that position, working closely with that team, reviewing the search warrants and doing those things. We have an attorney assigned to SOSET, the Southern Oregon Child Exploitation Team. They work closely with them when they do the sting operations to, again, develop the best cases that we possibly can in what we're going to need in order to prosecute our cases. And then the STAR team, the sheriff talked a little bit about that as well, the Serious Traffic Accident Reconstruction Team. We have a couple of different deputies. On most major crashes, a deputy DA responds out to the crash, actually. So that you saw the sheriff's numbers, and that's just for the sheriff. We do that for every agency in the county. And so I think in the last, I'd say 8 years, we've really seen our prosecutions on those types of cases increase and have more success because we're involved from the very beginning. It also helps the deputy to really understand the crash situation, having been out on the scene to see exactly what they're talking about when they're talking about what might have caused this crash. Interagency teams that we also participate in, some of these are by statute. We are required to be either the lead in them. So the multidisciplinary child abuse team is a statutory requirement. They meet weekly, go over cases that are pending. The child fatality team meets quarterly, again, statutorily required. And we go over cases that where children have passed away, and is there something that could have been prevented? Is there something that could be improved upon within our community to try to alleviate that in the future? The SART team is the sexual assault response team. Elder abuse is also statutorily required for us to be part of, and so they meet with those investigators to talk about those cases. And then in the last few years, we've gotten involved with the Jackson County Level 2 Threat Assessment Team. And that team really looks at kind of problem cases that aren't quite fitting into the criminal justice laws of what to file against somebody or how to proceed with a case. And those are folks that we have just real concern about in the community. Maybe they haven't done something yet, but they've made some threats about doing something. And so that's been really a big benefit, I think, to our office as well as to the team itself to try to bring some prosecution solutions to those situations. And with all of these ones, we really work on community education, we work on prevention. It gives us an opportunity to do those things as well, rather than just prosecution. But prosecution's a big part of each of those teams. For prosecution sources of funding, we're 90% general fund. So again, most of our funds come from that. We have about 4% in fees and then 6% in federal, state, or local funds that we receive. So that's the prosecution side. Our next division is family support. And so family support, their accomplishments this year where they've collected almost $10 million in child support for families here in Jackson County, established paternity orders in 98% of the cases that they were asked to work on, and maintained a 70% collection rate on current cases and 71% collection rate on cases that were in arrears. And so that's really showing their dedication. They also have had some turnover in staff, and the staff had been really consistent for a very long time, but we're coming to some retirements, and so we've had some new people hired in that area. But they go through a really stringent training program that's provided by the state, and we're expecting that those numbers will be able to maintain with the new staff coming on. The family supports funding comes 78% from federal and state incentives for collecting child support, and 21% from general fund, and then 1% from fees that they obtain. Our third division in the office is victim assistance. And so in our victim assistance office, some accomplishments for them, they provided services to 4,006 crime victims. 815 of those were domestic violence, 33 adult sexual abuse, 233 were children, and 39 folks were family members of homicide victims. And so our victim advocates are working directly with all of those families, dealing with the trauma that they're having to go through, preparing them for court proceedings, helping them with restitution, helping them with other services that are available in our community, really providing a vital service to the community for folks who ended up being a victim of crime. And then they also prepare restitution orders. So it's about $10.5 million in restitution that they prepared the orders on for the court. And this year we just had about $4,600 that we collected prior to sentencing. That number really fluctuates quite a bit from year to year depending on the type of cases where we might be able to collect some funds for folks before they actually have a judgment and have to wait for like payments. And so we work to try to get some of that money up front for folks if we can. Funding for victim services is about 50-50 almost. 45% is from grants and 55% is from the general fund. And although I didn't prepare a slide about Measure 110 and House Bill 4002, that deflection program, so before I get to questions, that deflection program is meant to be pre-court. So the hope is that we won't do public defenders, we won't do prosecution time, we won't do court time. Law enforcement will identify someone who they believe is ready for treatment and then have some type of a handoff program where they can plug them right into treatment. That's the goal of it and the hope of it. How it's going to all work, we're meeting to try to figure that out. We have a couple models around the state that we can look at to see, can we kind of do what they are doing, or is something different going to work better in our community? When House Bill 4002 recriminalized low amounts of drugs, that's a great thing. They made them U misdemeanors, which was a new classification. So again, sometimes there's that disconnect between the legislature's ideas and then how they really work in our communities. So one of the things that they did, so this is when we actually file a case in court. So when we file a case in court and the person appears, the judge would inquire of them, are you interested in treatment? And if the person said, I'm not interested in treatment, then the judge, if they pled guilty, the judge could sentence them to 180 days in their jail. So 6 months in their jail. So that's the hammer that comes with the stick that comes with the carrot of treatment. In our community, we know we aren't going to be able to give people 180 days in jail. So we don't have that same stick that we can use that maybe another community has jail space and might. So that really will encourage people to take the treatment route if they've missed deflection for whatever reason, it wasn't offered to them, and now they're in court with their case. They'll have other opportunities like conditional discharge if they're interested in treatment. So they'll have conditional discharge, they'll have probation, and so the legislature really kind of mapped out a very interesting way that you can proceed with your case. But in our community with our jail space, it's the stick is just not there. So we're gonna have to work on other ways that we encourage people to choose treatment rather than to just say, nope, just give me the conviction. It's just a misdemeanor, I don't really care. And then how many days in jail are they really gonna get? So that's going to be our struggle. There's other really good parts of the House Bill 4002. There was a judicial case that changed how delivery was defined, and the legislature fixed that. So we have had cases where if you had, for example, let's say 10 pounds of fentanyl in your car, that wasn't enough to prove that you were going to deliver the fentanyl. Maybe you had that all for personal use. I mean, it was ridiculous, but that's what the rule said. So we couldn't prosecute that person for delivery. We could only prosecute them for attempted delivery. They fixed that. So we will see more people who are dealing in drugs get much more serious crimes. And they also developed an enhancement for if you're dealing drugs around a park or around a treatment facility, then there's going to be enhancements and the person could get more serious consequences. So there were some good things that came out of House Bill 4002. We're just going to have some work to do on trying to figure out what we have to offer people here in Jackson County, what services we could plug people into to be that carrot to get them to choose treatment. Because we saw with Measure 110, when people just were chewing it on their own, they weren't making that choice either. So that'll be our struggle to figure out, but we do work really well together, and I have no doubt we will come up with some kind of plan that hopefully will serve our community really well. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Thanks, Beth. Questions? Thank you very much, Beth.
All right, you're welcome.
Best
Thank you.
wishes on your retirement.
Thank you.
All right, next.
Ways to go, so I can't get too excited.
Yeah. Start counting the days. Yeah. Next up is community justice. Morning, Kiki.
Wait for Stephen to pass those out and then I'll get started.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Morris, members of the Budget Committee, Commissioners, Mr. Jordan. I'm Kiki Parker-Rose, and I have the honor of serving as the Community Justice Director. Community Justice is made up of 3 departments. We have Adult Services, which is also known as Parole and Probation, Juvenile Services, which is our detention, residential, diversion, and probation department, and then our Transition Center, which provides transitional housing, sanction capacity. Our work crews are dispatched from there. Our mission and values are to provide public safety through accountability and change. Our values include trust, integrity, consistency, teamwork, and respect. So our essential functions are to provide our care and supervision to just over 2,300 adults and youth in our community. And as you think about 2,300 adults and youth in our community, it's important to realize that all of those folks are attached to somebody, who are attached to somebody, who are attached to somebody. So the emphasis of the impact of our supervision is really much larger than 2,300 adults and youth in the community. We provide a balance of supervision, services, and support and sanctions. We assist in behavior change. We hold adults and youth accountable within our community. We engage in community and victim reparation, and we promote public safety and the livability of our community. I just wanted to highlight a couple of quick things about our accomplishments in the last year. I didn't put a slide in for this. It is in the packet. I just wanted to talk about, one second, and I will tell you what I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about how important the relationships are that we are engaged in with all of our community partners. Community justice is not able to provide the services and care to the community without the partnerships, specifically through the District Attorney's Office. Health and Human Services is a very large partner for us, and the Sheriff's Department. But we also partner with peers. A lot of our community partners include the schools and the Juvenile Services Department, A&D treatment. We partner with our CCOs in order to make sure that we can get care to the folks that we provide supervision to. We are funded through a variety of different resources. The General Fund provides funding, as well as the Community Corrections Act, and then we have a number of grants and fees that we collect. So our overall budget is $24.34 million. As I said, our revenue comes from a variety of places. The majority of our funding comes from Community Corrections Act for adult services. The rest comes from justice reinvestment. You may have heard me speak before in some different settings about our justice reinvestment programs. Those programs are not just benefiting community justice, but also at the jail, the transition center, and a number of our peers within the community. At Juvenile Services, the majority of our funds, revenue comes from general fund. 74% is general fund. We also get some state funding through OYA and Youth Developmental Services. And then our transition center is a balance of Community Corrections Act funding, the general fund, and then a variety of grants and self-generated fees. The majority of our budget is for personnel. 17.02 million is for personnel services. We also contract with a lot of partners within the community, and that is 5.27. And then just our overall cost of doing business with travel and training, property maintenance, equipment maintenance, lease, those sorts of things. So we have 136 full-time employees included in this budget. That's up by 2 from last fiscal year. The majority of our personnel are in adult services or parole and probation, with 48.53 full-time employees. Juvenile services is 47.15, and that includes our detention, residential, probation staff. And then the transition center is 38.95, and then we have an administration category. So I want to talk a little bit about our transition center. Our transition center is probably the most well-known facility that we have now, because our work crews are dispatched out of there, and that's kind of what people see within the community. So those are community service workers, as well as folks that are residing with us, going into the community and conducting work. At the Transition Center, we also provide housing assistance. Our goal is to help those that are leaving our facility to have stable housing. We partner with Access, the Oxford House, Rogue Retreat, and a number of other community partners to help with housing. All of our community justice officers are certified OHP assisters, so we can make sure that folks have OHP when they release from the Transition Center. We have substance use services on site, as well as out in the community that we refer to. A large part of our investment is in peer services, so those are folks who have lived experience in coming through the system, and then walking alongside those folks that we are currently providing our care and supervision to. We also have an on-site residential program. That's our transitional care program. That's where folks actually live with us for 4 to 5 months and get intensive cognitive behavioral treatment, SUD or substance use treatment, mental health treatment. And each person releasing from there has housing, employment, and peer support as they leave our facility. We also have employment readiness on site. We just brought Goodwill on site with us within the last 4 weeks. And the very first day they were there, they saw 15 individuals who were in need of either soft skill building or resume building. And a lot of our folks just need some extra support when it comes to finding employment. We also have MAT, medically assisted treatment, or MOUD, which is the opioid use disorder services on site. We we partner with Boulder Care, who is a telehealth treatment facility that helps us with our medically assisted treatment when folks release. And then I think you heard the sheriff talk a little bit about the jail reentry program. That's a new program that we're going to be starting, where we are going to help those releasing from custody have a safer pathway out, especially when it comes to opioid use. We see that when they release, they're at a higher risk to overdose. And so we're stationing 2 folks within the facility that will really do care coordination as folks are releasing from jail, partnering with the jail, Health and Human Services, and many of our community partners. Adult services, also known as, I want to go back to our transition center really quickly and just give you some stats. So we provided 16,935 transitional housing bed days last year. Those are bed days that otherwise this population would have been out on the street, likely the Greenway, going couch to couch, something like that. So that's a very large investment in transitional housing and housing for the community. And the county's portion of the general fund is just over $2 million for that. So that's a very large investment that county general fund makes in ensuring that we are addressing our unhoused population. We also have a Bureau of Prisons contract at the Transition Center where we have the capacity to house 20 federal clients that are either public law clients or pretrial releases. Some of those are, if you will, sanctioned folks for the federal probation program. We have 40 sanctioned capacity beds at the Transition Center, which means folks leaving the jail can come out and continue to reside with us. We tell them that they have to be there, but our facility is not a locked facility. They can leave at any time. Of course, there'll be a consequence if they leave without our permission. We're completely hands-off. These folks are not in custody in our facility. They're just simply serving out the rest of their sanction. And then we have 65 transitional housing beds. And so we operate we have about 95 folks with us at any given time within the facility, either sanctioned, Bureau of Prison, and then we usually are running around 12 folks in our transitional care program, which is the residential program. Adult services is parole and probation. So we have 1,810 adults on supervision with us currently. We are continuing to see that number increase. Even with the public defender crisis, we have a lot of folks releasing from the institution, so they're kind of coming to us on the back end as opposed to from the probation or from the court side. Our parole and probation officers are required to complete risk assessments so that we can determine what level of care and supervision to provide to the adult on supervision. We engage in structured skill building. We have significantly increased our field work in the last 12 months. We are in the field a lot. We're using the radio. We're checking out so folks know that we're in the community. And then we impose consequences when necessary. We provide housing referral and assistance, employment readiness, substance use treatment. We fund sex offender treatment within our community. Otherwise, the adult on supervision would be required to pay for that. And we know that treatment is an important piece of those folks coming and remaining in our community, so we fund a large portion of treatment, and we fund polygraphs within the community. We also provide DUI assessment, and we've really streamlined that. Before, we get $150 per case from the person coming to us, and that does not pay for the work that goes into monitoring that population. We monitor just over 1,500 at this point of folks in the community with DUIs. We also have GPS and home custody for alternative incarceration and a community service work program. Just as a highlight, last year we had 72.9% of the cases that came to us were a positive case closure compared to the state's rate of 68.1%. So we think that's good because you're going to always hear about recidivism and how terrible that is, and so we think it's important to focus on the positive case closures, and the fact that we are reducing risk within the community. One thing I think that kind of highlights the challenges that are posed within our community is their public safety risk, right? This is the risk for folks to recidivate in our community. And so we did put Multnomah County on here because I think it's a good comparable. And if you look at that chart, you'll see that there's high and medium risk folks, and then the overall population. We also have a low risk population. As you can see from that chart, Multnomah County has 107 more high-risk cases than Jackson County. So that means we're the second highest risk, high-risk population in the community that we provide supervision for. That is a lot of work for parole and probation officers. We're carrying caseloads right now of somewhere between 60 and 65. Those are all high and medium risk folks. I'll talk a little bit about some of our recruitment challenges as we move on. Our Juvenile Services Department, again, is made up of probation, diversion, and intake. This is the largest investment the county makes through general fund, is in our Juvenile Services Department. Last year, we had 475 youth referred to us, and we currently have 158 youth on supervision. Our detention capacity is 16. We average about 15 right now, although we have continued to see an uptake, especially with female youth who are engaging in assaultive behavior. So we've seen those folks starting to come into the facility more often. We have a residential program. This is the residential program that is really the last stop before a youth goes into Oregon Youth Authority. We have 10 beds. They engage in 6 months of intensive treatment services, and we average about 9 male youth in that facility. As in adult services, we continue to do case planning. We engage in restorative justice services. We contract for mental health services, peer services. We engage in medication management. So we provide a number of services with the juvenile department. I will just note, we did run statistics on what the risk is for the youth, and Jackson County youth are at also the second highest in the state, behind Washington County for the number of high-risk youth coming in to receive probation services from us. Some of our areas of opportunity or emphasis for the next year is we have been significantly investing in our leadership team. We think that by investing in the leadership team and succession planning, we can help create a culture and environment where folks want to work for us and with us. I think that would help with our employee recruitment. We have been down 5 adult parole and probation officers since I've been here, so about 14 months. We are also continuing to struggle with recruitment at our transition center and then extra help at our juvenile facility. We are heavily engaged in restorative justice in the juvenile services world. Our leadership team is currently contracted with a provider, and we have been engaging in learning strategies to ensure that we are, from the top down, implementing restorative justice services with our juvenile population. We want to continue to increase services at the transition center. The state just recently took the ability for local counties and jurisdictions to create their own contact standards on our adult services side. We used to have local supervisory authority to make those decisions. The state has now implemented their own contact standards and what we have to do and what we're required to do for meeting standards. And so those will be launching May 1st. And so we're in the middle of putting together some strategies on how we're going to meet the state requirements. And then, of course, just like you heard the sheriff and the district attorney talk about, we're also going to be engaging in figuring out ways to best navigate the House Bill 4002 changes, which is also the ballot measure 110 reform. We will see an impact on conditional discharges. Those come under community justice supervision as well as probation. I was in a meeting late last week and I heard from the Criminal Justice Commission they're expecting about 4,000 new cases within the next 18 months to be prosecuted and possibly coming to community corrections. I think we'll actually see the most impact in the 25-27 biennium as those changes come through. With that, I appreciate the support that you all provide. Again, just really want to emphasize the incredible relationships that we're able to have in Jackson County. I previously served as a community corrections director in Lake and Klamath County, and I just want to commend Jackson County for the leadership and really establishing the ability for folks to have really genuine and authentic conversations and still create an environment that people want to work together for the livability and public safety of our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Kiki. Questions? Thank you, Kiki.
Thank you so much.
All right, we've now come to the part in our agenda where we are open for public comment. Do we have anybody here who would like to make public comment to us right now? Seeing nobody responding, I do have a statement that I would like to read. The Budget Committee encourages the public to submit comments in writing, either by mail to 10 South Oakdale, Room 214, Medford, Oregon 97501, or email to boc_CAO_admin@jacksoncounty.org. Written comment must be received by 12 p.m. on Thursday, April 18th, 2024, and all written correspondence must include the author's name and address. I also have a list of rules for the public hearing, but seeing that there is no one who is wanting to give comment, I'm not going to read them at this time. So we are going to go on break. Does 10 minutes sound okay to everybody? Yeah? Okay, we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Joe Charter on behalf of the Jackson County Justice Court. I have some bar graphs to go along with your numbers in the packet. First is total revenues to the county. Of course, the Justice Court is a disbursement center for various entities, including the state and local governments, but this is the share that goes to the county. During recent fiscal years, I've looked back about 10 years, and the average, I would say, is more in the 1.1 to 1.2 million per fiscal year. For some reason, the last fiscal year was a high point. I don't think we were at 1.4. You'd have to look back to about 2015, 2016 to be at that level. So for the coming fiscal year, we are predicting a return to that mean of about 1.1, 1.2. I think our year-to-date estimate, or based on year-to-date, is about 1.1. And you can see there's been a general increase in revenues during the pandemic years. I think some other slides will show that I think that our consumers are being a bit more pinched by inflation and other factors in terms of the macroeconomic scene. This is our revenue by quarter. We see a bump in the second quarter, usually every year, certainly the last 3 years. That coincides with tax refunds, where that allows people to pay their existing obligations, or whether we do a direct offset with the Department of Revenue. Yeah. That's how that happens.
Is that Christmas bonuses?
Sorry, that. This is our total number of cases. On average, total number of cases is fairly stable at about 12,000 cases per year. Pre-COVID, we were doing more than that. We have done as much as 18,000, 19,000 cases, violation cases only per calendar year. Of course, the sheriff office is the largest part of that, roughly half of our volume. About 1/4 of our volume comes from the municipalities, 1/4 from the state waymaster, the port of entry down on I-5. Here's a comparison of those state and local. Again, the Waymaster would be the blue, the localities, municipalities are the red. In recent years, the municipalities have been outpacing the Waymaster in terms of volume of our caseload. We have, at least when I'm at the Justice Court, always tracked cases per clerk as a department performance measure. Of course, it depends on volume, but at least in the last 3 years, we've seen a gradual increase in cases per clerk as a measure of our workflow or our clerk efficiency. This is the bad news in the report in terms of what I have seen since coming back in January is our collection rate from our outside collection agency has been pretty steady decline over the last 3 years. 2024 is perhaps a little unfair because that's of March 15. It doesn't include that second quarter bump with tax refunds. And although our volume has remained stable during the pandemic years and total revenue has increased, we've seen our collection rates dwindle considerably. Some of the factors may be the governor's remission orders, basically forgiving past due obligations in many cases. We have an inability to suspend driver's licenses for lack of payment, came in during as part of the COVID relief legislative package. And our agency perhaps has had reduced assertiveness due to their own staffing limits. And we've just recently implemented some measures to deal with that. We have a specialized 1:30 in the afternoon. I call it the accountability docket. It's when we call people in on a show cause order and say, look, you have this obligation, you've made one payment or no payment, what's going on? How can we work with you to establish a payment plan? What's your situation? It's the only way we get a sense of whether people have an ability to pay. We're statutorily required to inquire as to ability to pay. Some people simply can't, so we have in the past used options like community service, whether through community justice or sort of self-directed, so that there is some accountability for these violations. We're also considering a change in our collections agency. So I want to end on a high note. I don't have a lot of information for you, but we continue to expand our partnerships with the cities. We're not just a traffic court. Over the last 10 years, we're doing a lot of municipal code violations, so code enforcement, things like accumulation of trash and dogs at large. And in fact, we've sort of by default, I guess, have taken over as the animal control hearings officer, and to a considerable savings to that department. I don't have a number for you. They didn't get back to us about that, but seen a lot of dog cases at the Justice Court these days. That's what I have for you. It's short and sweet. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Questions?
Yes, I had one. First, you talked about the inability to suspend driver's license coming from COVID. Obviously, we're out of COVID. Is there any effort to reinstate that, or is that something that has become a darling of the folks that instituted it now?
It would be a legislative change,
Right.
so I have not heard a stampede because, as we know, most of our policy directives come from up north Portland area. The trend has been towards consumer debt relief, and so often legislatively we're trying to defend what we have instead of making new initiatives because we're kind of outgunned in that debate.
Right. have you heard from any other justice court that this is impeding their ability to create a deterrent for people, even on these, whatever traffic offenses, but again, that these offenses are on the rise because of the lost ability to deter that action because of inability to collect?
I haven't had those direct discussions. I've made inquiries about what they're seeing in collections, who they're happy with. I did want to agree with what the sheriff said in terms of impaired driving. If you look at the last 10 years statewide, traffic fatalities are going up, and you can see those bumps both with marijuana legalization, with Measure 110, significant bumps. I was at a conference this spring. I think the statistics based on medical examiner data was that 60% of impaired drivers where they do tests, cannabis related, something like 40% poly use, so 3 or more different drugs on board. So certainly support and agree with the sheriff's enforcement of impaired driving. As far as the accountability piece, to try to answer your question, again, we're trying to do that internally. We're trying to work with what we have from the legislative tools we have. So certainly, if we can only impose fines and the legislator takes away some of those enforcement tools, we have to work with what we have.
Is one of those a failure to appear that can result in a suspension?
It's kind of the 130 accountability docket that I mentioned, because we still have the failure to appear suspension option. So if they don't come to the 130 docket, then they fail to appear. We can suspend the license. And again, we're just trying to get their attention to figure out what their story is, whether they have an ability to pay, and how we can work with them to try to arrange something that makes sense for them.
And to your knowledge, no bill, no proposed legislation on reinstating some of the policies prior to COVID?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm kind of a new guy, so what do I know? I'm new back to this.
You should be the old guy.
Yeah, the new old guy.
Yeah, I have just a real quick one. You used the term debt relief. Are we talking about debt forgiveness, not debt relief?
Well, certainly the governor's remission orders, and there was one from Governor Brown, one from Governor Kotek, and it's put some administrative burden on us because we're required to send information back. We have some unhappy customers that say, look, I qualify under the governor's definition, but I'm not on the list. And we have to say, well, we didn't create the list. So certainly with remission, and you could have a discussion of whether that debt beyond a certain point, several years, is collectible or not. But certainly I see that as part of our job, is to enforce consequences. So we're working with the tools we have.
Anything else? Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is Development Services. Morning, Ted.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Morris and members of the Budget Committee. Always good to be back. I always know it's spring, so that's that's good. Development Services budget report here. Gonna start right in if that's okay. One of the things we do is we have to have our overall goals, like any department, and one of them is to provide the necessary information to our customers. I'll talk about these a little bit more in detail, but a kind of overview of what some of our performance measures are. To balance staffing and workloads, that one's really important, especially this year. We are fully staffed for the first time in planning division, which is something that I have not seen in my 7 years as Development Services Director. To utilize the program-specific performance measures, each division has their own specific performance measures, and we'll go over those, and provide the staff with a respectful, satisfying workplace. One of that is the keys of now that we are fully staffed and we believe we have the right people, make sure they have the training, make sure that they, a happy employee is usually a much more productive employee and gives better customer service. So make sure that we retain them. On our accomplishments for last year, the building program, we continue to refine our virtual inspections, our remote inspections. We've worked with the state on this. These are pretty slick. They get inputted right into our permanent tracking system. One of the things we're finding that locally we don't have a lot of, it's being underutilized. So this year we're going to be doing a outreach program, working with the state, going around trying to bring the contractors, developers in and let them know that this tool is actually available. If you have a project site, the further you are away from Medford, obviously we have to get the inspectors out there. If it's an inspection that doesn't need a lot of oversight, they can do it by video or they can send it to us through this program. It saves them time, and time is money when it comes to contracting. We received 100% correctness rate on our planning division's annual CRS. That's our community rating system that deals with FEMA floodplain. To just put that in perspective, this is the second year in a row that we got 100% completeness. And we're dealing with FEMA. That's kind of unheard of. And right now our rating system is 7. The highest you can get is 10. And 7 is really good, and put that in perspective to you. City of Medford, theirs is 5. City of Salem, theirs is 5. So 5, sometimes 6 is standard. There's some down there at 3 or 4. Getting a 7 off this from FEMA and getting a kudos, good job, 100% completeness. I feel I should buy a lottery ticket. Comprehensive planning. We were commended again by DEQ on our completeness on our TMDL report. That's our total mass daily load. Measures the sediments, pollutions that go into the rivers and streams, and we coordinate that with other agencies. So everybody from water masters to roads department to code enforcement, to anybody that has touches any of that. So our current planning staff, we processed 1,561 projects. That's over 150 projects per planner. So I'll go a little more into some of those details. Wildfire Resiliency Permit Center, we continue to operate as of today, but we've done such a good job that it's closing on April 22nd. So it's a good thing, something when you're talking about trying to expedite permits, you've got through the process enough that it's not needed anymore. Services will continue in development services, but we wanted to be cognizant also of the funding that we were getting for it. And again, all the staffing vacancies were filled in the planning department. So some of our other accomplishments, code enforcement is still seeing a lot of marijuana out there. Still a substantial number of complaints. Again, I'll go over a little more drill down in detail on that. The production sites, although they're a lot smaller, we still have a lot of, still have the sites out there. And again, we're holding steady around 1,500 code enforcement cases, and we still have around 1,500 code enforcement cases. And I'll get a little more into the details of how many of those are marijuana and how many are not when we get to that point. The department, through legislative action, this was actually in 2022 session, but it got extended into this biennial. Gave us, got a grant for $710,000 towards planning and building services. They came out of supplemental budgets, but it helped fund things like third party to help with some of that expedited. There was also $454,000 that came for running the Wildfire Resiliency Permit Center. We still have some funding for that, but again, if the traffic flow is not going through it, it's not a good use of spending those expenditures. The fire hardening program, we initially got $5.7 million to dole out. This is for fire hardening of houses. So far, we've given out $1.84 million. And one of the things about the grants is as we're transitioning out of these grants that are running out this year from the state, we're also looking at BRIC grants, which are the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grants. We are told from the 2023 application that we put in that we will be getting it. And it is 2024, and as federal grants seem to work a lot slower than state grants do. We're hoping to see some of that money come in this fiscal year, but that would, again, will be a supplemental budget. Money for that was around $370,000, and that would include things like building accreditation program where we could be nationally recognized and audited in our building department. It would also give us some money for rewriting things like Chapter 1 of the building code to give more local control over some things that we can have local control over. The one for the 2024 grant, which we're not expecting to see probably for another year or two, but that one was 2 grants of $800,000 each. We're told that we are in the final running for that, although we haven't got it confirmed. One of those is for an LDO rewrite update, which is sorely needed. And the other is for code enforcement software to make code enforcement, their software a little more along the lines of the enforcement that they do. Right now, we have permit tracking software. So it works and we make it work, but if we had a software that integrated a little better with actually what they do, that's what that money's for. So, department revenue, 6.807 million budget. That's up from 6.543 last year. That's about a 4% increase, which is fairly modest considering all the inflation and other factors out there of where we're at. With that, fees and permit fees and application fees pay for the bulk of what we do. That's 49%. 27% comes from the community development fee, and the community development fee is a fee that was introduced back in 2003 by the Board of Commissioners, and that was a fee to help fund development services so that our application fees didn't go skyrocket up, and then general fund money didn't have to be used towards paying for development services. That's 1.95% of the valuation. It is capped at $16,000. It was initially a 1.6% fee, and that's where the $16,000 comes in because it was capped at $1 million. But we kept that $16,000 cap. 15% does come from the general fund, 3% from transfers from other departments. There's a roads transfer and a White City enhanced law enforcement transfer, which I'll go a little more detail on. And then that 6% is the IMEG, the Illegal Marijuana Market Enforcement Grant. That funding will run to the end of this coming fiscal year, and then the funding stops. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like with staffing-wise. You see that one's actually in our budget because we actually know we're getting it. Some of the other grants and stuff I'm talking about aren't in our budget because we have to wait until we actually know for sure that the money is there, and that'll be in a supplemental budget. So expenditures, obviously we matched to 6.807. Personnel expenses are always the biggest, 73%. That's pretty much no matter private or government payroll, personnel expenses are usually your biggest expense. 14% comes from chargebacks. That's up $75,000 from last year, which is an 8% increase. It's actually a pretty modest increase when you consider where inflation and all the other market forces are, that it is at 14%. And then the 13% that's in there is our operating expenses. That's everything from the pencils to everything else that we do in the department. And that's really what we're here talking about today. It's $851,000. So our FTEs, we're at 41 FTEs in our department. You'll see that the building and current planning divisions are fairly equal on that, as you'd imagine. Comprehensive planning is 3.65, and that's because there's more specialized projects. And code enforcement, we're at 10.25. 3 code enforcement officers and 1 office assistant are part of that IMEG grant currently. So this number of the customers served, 41,791 customers. Considering that we have 41 staff, if every staff called back, which every staff is not responsible for making return calls, you're talking over 1,000 customer responses. That could be the emails, phone calls, or encounter. But that's a lot of returning customer calls on the service that we do. Considering there's on average 249 days in a year that are actual working days, that makes that even more impressive. That's the number of customers that we help some way, somehow every year. So performance measures, statutory timelines. We are at 100%. This is for both planning and building, whether we meet our statutory timelines, what we're doing, what the state's telling us we're supposed to do. The only one you're seeing there, that 99.999999 from 2022-23, that was one case that went through. We had thought we had a goodwill conversation with the applicant. We had our decision out, but it got appealed, and during that hearing process is when they took it and put a mandamus on it. What I will say on that, though, is once it got across the street and the judge took a look at it, the judge affirmed our decision, and the appeal was stopped. So bad that it got there, good that we were affirmed. Certainly lessons learned from that one. On the building services, development services building program, we're up from 2.194 to 2.325 million. Pretty flat, but one of the things you notice on the building program is 100% fee-based. It's a user-based system. Nothing comes out of the general fund, or nothing comes from other sources. In fact, usually there's some money that comes back into the general fund. For the building permits, this is a graph showing you what it has been over the years. You're seeing the 1920 and the 2021 fiscal years, even now, 22, 23. They've gone up. A lot of that is the wildfire rebuild. Just to give you an idea where we are with that, one of the things Development Services did with some of our grant money is we created a dashboard, got in coordination with the other cities, make sure that our data was the same across the lines. So this is a service any citizen, congressional person and representative, college, media, it's a site that they can all go to and get this information. It was something that we did with the grant money and then coordinated to make it happen with a service. But from those stats, for the structures that were either major damage or completely destroyed after the wildfires, there were 1,225 in unincorporated Jackson County. We have 841 permits in for there. For Phoenix, 539 either destroyed or completely or major damage, and 297 permits in there. Talent, 736, 553 permits in. What that means, basically what we're looking at, for the county, that's 68% of the permits that we would expect to come in to get rebuilt have come in. And if you took Phoenix and Talent, put it into that equation, we're at 66%. That's still a lot of permits out there. One of the things to consider with the county is we're doing really good on that rebuild part, because 80% of the damage that we had came out of manufactured home parks, which required new infrastructure be built, which required manufactured homes, which we were having that supply shortage, which we're 2 years out to even getting here. So the numbers are not that bad, but it's also, there's a lot more to come in. So looking at what we're expecting on permits, we still expect to have a lot of work from that. On the performance measures, I tell you every year, this is one of my favorite slides. We strive for 100%. The state says we have to have our inspections done within 48 hours. Our internal measure is 24. If you call before 7 o'clock in the morning that morning, you're going to get your inspection that day most of the time. You'll see it, some of these are at 99.6, 99.8. That's variables, everything from weather to a specialized inspector that we had, might have been sick that day. So we can't always get that 100%, but we are pretty darn close to it. On the residential plan reviews, we're about 75% that we're expecting to be done within 10 days. The residential plan reviews, they break them down into simple and complex plan reviews. And the state's measure is have the simple plan reviews done within 10 days. That 75% is reflective that that's actually what we get done. The 25%, as you can imagine, houses get more complicated, a lot more engineering. Sometimes they don't meet that standard, but that's why you'll see it's not at 100%. On the code enforcement program, budget went from 1.514 to 1.573. That's a 3.9% increase. $58,000, again, relatively flat on where our budget's at. You see that the revenue that comes in from this, grants, that $416,000, that's that IMEG grant. Community development fee is 26% and general fund is 35%. On the fines and fees, we're budgeting $71,000 this year. Just to put that in perspective, in the last fiscal year, we budgeted we're budgeting $202,000. In the last fiscal year, we budgeted $191,000. Let me back up from that. We budgeted $71,000 and got $191,000 in fees. This year, we're budgeting $202,000. And so far, to the end of February, we have $70,000 that came in. So we're trying to be conservative on that. Code enforcement is it's a voluntary compliance program. We're not out there about fining people. But as we've had marijuana over the last few years and the fines have increased and we've had a lot more, we're starting to see the realization of some of those fines start coming through. With that, we're also looking at the 3 code enforcement officers that we have. We have an open position. We're choosing not to fill it at this point because we don't know what the certainty of where our revenue is actually going to be at. Same with the office's assistant position. On performance measures for code enforcement, you'll see the third line down there is we're looking at we're projecting 1,600 cases this year. Last year we had 1,550, and right now we're at 1,555. Again, the work is out there. There's a few factors. Anecdotally, I can tell you that we're starting to get a lot of cases come back for things that we historically had, like solid waste or not having permits. Some of that actually kind of because of priority reasons and because maybe public perception, they weren't coming in because of the marijuana, and we were so swamped with that. but the caseload is still there.
Ted, could you go back to that previous
Sure.
slide? Do you have standards, performance measure standards on those? I mean, what are your goals for, so you're at 30% for code cases closed and compiled. What's your goal?
Well, the goal is always 100%. The cases that get closed as complied, those are the ones that have voluntarily complied. They don't have to go to the hearing. The unfounded cases, it's 12%. Those are the cases that people call in and there's a complaint, and we go out there and there's like, there is no complaint or it is not a county violation. So that's 42% of the cases right there that we've done our job, and they're not something that we need to follow up on. The rest on it, that 38 are, the rest that would be left are the ones that we're running through the process. One of the things that makes it hard for code enforcement is sometimes these cases take a year, 2 years, 3 years. We're dealing with people that may not have the financial means, they may not have the ability to rectify the cases. So it's kind of hard to take the data of how many cases that we had that year and then say, this is how many we closed, and say that was representative of the cases that we actually closed, that we started new cases on. So it's kind of a revolving thing. 30% your C is pretty standard. That's about what we get most years, and we send a notice out and say, hey, we think there's a violation out there. 30% of the people act on it and take care of it, and we're good to go. The other 12%, like I said, those are cases that people call in and there is no violation out there. So the rest of the cases, the almost 60% of those cases, they revolve. I guess that's maybe not the best answer you want, but it's kind of hard to get the statistics on it when it's constantly changing.
I guess maybe the question that 100% of the cases or at some point either closed and complied with, unfounded, or they go through the process of a hearing and are somehow adjudicated at some point. There's none that are just dropped and said we're not going to pursue this anymore.
That's correct.
Well, let me just say this, though. Some also get into a continuing violation status. So they don't care that there's been a lien placed on their house. They just keep violating and they keep having a lien, and it's perpetual. And then it requires action each time the continuing violation occurs. Some of those cases get caught up in a perpetual cycle of code. The other thing that happens a lot is someone will clear a code case but get another code case. So is that considered successful or not? That happens a lot of times, actually. And the sticking point here, and probably the place that may provide an opportunity for a performance measure, I think, is the code enforcement hearings. Because, we didn't have enough administrative hearings officers, especially with when marijuana hit. It's very hard to expand that pool of people. It's kind of a specialty. We've been able to expand that by partnering with Lane County, actually, to get a pool of hearings officers that are also hearing our cases. And you could probably see the increase in incremental cases going through the hearings process, because that's essentially where they get some level of resolution. Either they get a fine, which can be waived if they correct the behavior, or they get a fine, or they can take us through court on a mandamus claim, essentially claim we didn't follow our own procedures, not necessarily that they were found to be in violation or not. So all of those things are going on simultaneously. There's not one thing to track, I guess, it's Ted's trying to say. The exception of maybe the time to a code hearing and the resolution from a code hearing.
Right, right. I'm following what Ted's saying. This is really data that's about the department as opposed to a performance measure. So a performance measure, by definition, has a goal that you measure performance against. So I would just
It's a fair
encourage
point.
you, yeah, to, yes.
We'll change that to make it not confusing. You know, to Danny's point, and thank you, you did it. There's stuff that's continuing, and there's stuff that, yeah, they clean up, and then we come back, and we're there 6 months again later, and how do you judge that? For the hearings officer, about 19% of our cases actually go to hearing. Considering, you know, those are the people, a lot of those are the continuing violations, and the fact that these are people that have been given every opportunity to somehow come into compliance. 19% is about what gets there. Our hearings cases, at the height of things, we were having hearings both on Tuesdays and Thursdays every week. We're down to 1 day a week, and you know, anecdotally, that's our cases are going down there, also with the hearings officer, so they're getting adjudicated.
I do want to clarify, I think I said Lane County, and I meant Lane County Council of Governments, not actually county government, it's their COG.
Okay. Here we are, cannabis cases. So you see that over the last years, and these are calendar years, not fiscal years here. But in the calendar year, last year we had 643 out of those 1,558 cases, which were marijuana, and that's 40%. 2023, we had 337 out of 1,550. That's you know, 22%. One of the things that there's a couple things going on there is as the bigger cartels are taken care of, and we got smaller marijuana production. We still had a lot of sites to get to, maybe not as many cases if you're taking things into account like the greenhouses. You have a site where you would have 250 greenhouses on it. Each one of those could be a building code violation, is a land use violation. Some of the things that change on that is how the timing of when we can actually site for those. If you have a marijuana greenhouse, you may be able to qualify for an agricultural exemption. And citing before they could get that agricultural exemption, saying you don't have a building permit or an agricultural exemption, we now wait until afterwards, so some of the numbers are down off that. That's just a legality that we had to deal with. On the comprehensive planning, a little bit of a smaller budget, went from $636,000 to $654,000, a 2.8% increase. You will see that the community development fee is what funds most of this, as it should be. The community development, the comprehensive planning doesn't have a lot of applications come in. Something like a UGB, yes. Other things, no. They are usually things that we need to change the land development ordinance because there were legislative changes, or there's initiatives that came from the Board of Commissioners that we need to change something. So there's not a lot of user fees on that. That's why it's 63%. You see that only 5% of what we get is from user fees. General fund pays for 21% of that. And the transfers up there to $73,000. That is a transportation from the Roads and Parks Department. One of the things we do is we coordinate a lot on things like our transportation system plan and other things that affect both departments, and they help pay for half of a transportation planner. On the current planning, went from 2.197 to 2.254, it's a 2.6% increase. And again, you see that most of these are all pretty modest increases. They're fairly flat. We're trying to keep things and not increase things more than we need to. On the current planning, 44% comes from that community development fee, which is what I was explaining a little earlier. It was to offset the general fund contribution, and there it is in action. Fees and permits, 42%. and general fund at 14%. So if we didn't have that community development fee, 58% would be coming from the general fund otherwise. On the land use applications, you'll see same thing, the 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23, a lot of the wildfire activity, and you see that we dropped pretty good here. One of the things with the wildfire rebuild is some of those were not necessarily applications, they were over the counter. You had something, you want to build it and move forward with it. The other part of it is that we're seeing a lot more valuation on the projects. We're seeing some more commercial projects. Just to give you an example of where we are in this particular budget this year, we had budgeted 1.894 is what we had thought that we were going to be getting in application fees. And right now we're at 2.091 or 2,091,949. 110% of what our budget is what we projected. So even though the applications are down, the revenues are still up because of the valuations and the types of the jobs coming through. On the performance measures, now that we're fully staffed, we're looking to get 80% at an internal performance measure. On type 1, there is no statutory requirement to have, you can take as long as you want on a type 1. Our internal performance measure is 20 days. It's pretty dang aggressive, and we're at 80% of that. How we achieve some of that is we use third-party outfits also, so we can get the completeness review done here, ship it off to them, they can get it back, and try and maintain as close as we can to that 20 days. And one of the things you're seeing a theme on performance measures on all these, even when they're state standards, most other jurisdictions, or at least all the other jurisdictions I know, don't really have internal performance measures. We have aggressive ones. We know time is money and we need to get those applications out. Most places use the statutory timeline. So the type 2s, these are the ones that have discretion and do have that statutory timeline. The timeline is 120 days within a UGB and 150 days outside the UGB. We strive for 60 days, and our average time, you see, was at 72 days. That's still half of what statutory timeline is what other jurisdictions will be looking as their performance measure. So 35% with average processing time of 70 days is what we think we're going to be at. Now that we have the extra staffing, I'm hoping that those numbers even be better than what we're projecting here. On the type 3 applications, these are applications that not dissimilar to a type 2, but they're a little more location specific. There's other factors to determine is even if you're allowed to have it there, is it appropriate for you where you're going to have it, the noise, the traffic, there's a lot of other things. They're also noticed up front, where type 2 only is noticed if somebody asks or if an agency is interested in it. The decision is always noticed. They can have a hearing on it. But the type 3 is noticed before and basically after, if you will. We try to get those done in 90 days. Again, that's a lot less than 120 or 150, and we're projecting that we'll be about 40% there. And a lot of what happens on the type 3 is really applicant dependent. It's the information that we get in and whether we can process the plan more expeditiously. And then I talked a little about the Wildfire Resiliency Permit Center. Like I said, we had 5.7 that was initially granted. It ran through the first biennium, and we now have it until the end of the next state biennium. We gave out 1.84, so it gives us, 3.8 left. Just to give you a little idea on how well that worked, there were 272 commercial permits that we processed. 69 of those were full rebuilds. 1,102 residential permits, 82 single-family, 236 manufactured dwelling, and 234 structural permits. We also had 7 RV parks that we looked at. The fire hardening grant program was also administered out of the Resource Resiliency Center. And like I said, 1.844, 900 so far. That was 434 fire survivors that we helped through direct funding that came from the state for reimbursements. 102 of those applications were in Jackson County, 102 were in the city of Phoenix, and 230 were in the city of Talent. So I can say that we really do think that the program was a success. It's enough that we can handle the workload here, and then we're going to be bringing it back into development services. But the fire grant program will still be going. With that, my second favorite slide.
Yeah.
Questions?
Thanks, Ted. Questions? Yeah?
Well, in fact, it goes back to the fire hardening grant and everything. You said 1.8 out of 5.7. Is the program, and you may have said this, is it basically done right now, or do you see us, and that's a reimbursement, is that correct? So
That's a
you're not giving the money
reimbursement.
back.
Remember, we still have that 32% of permits that we have not seen yet. Any of those would qualify for fire hardening. And basically anybody that builds qualifies for something. For example, there's you can get $2,500 towards your roof. Have a Class A or B roof. There's no building materials out there unless you're talking about something like cedar shakes that doesn't qualify for that. So everybody puts an application in, and will get something. Everybody's listening to this, and you are out there. It's also retroactive. Even if you've already rebuilt, and you're not in process of rebuilding, and you've done this, and you've done it a year or two ago, come see us. Obviously, the money's out there, and anything we can do to help, fire survivor victims is a good thing.
Okay, so this is fully funded then, is what your point? Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't see us getting to actually spend the whole 5.7, but there's enough money that you put an application in, it's there.
So, yeah, you mentioned the IMEG grant is set to sunset or expire. Was that into fiscal 24-25 or calendar 25?
Fiscal 24-25 for code enforcement.
Okay.
I believe there's an extension that goes to law enforcement to the end of 2025, but that doesn't apply.
Okay,
to
that's
code
where I was
enforcement.
a little confused. And of the 10.25 FTE, code enforcement officers are still 6 of those currently, correct?
5.
5. Okay. Do we anticipate reducing those FTE when that IMEG grant?
We're taking a wait and see approach on that. Like I said, the workload is still steady. Our 5 officers seem to be handling it okay, and when it lasts, we want to be fiscally responsible. We also don't want to be hiring somebody and then laying them off, right when they first got trained. So
there are 5. There's only 5 FTE, or we only have 5 currently.
we have 6 FTE, but we only have
5.
5 currently, and we're not.
Excuse me.
We're not pursuing a recruitment at this time.
Okay.
Let me just add that this isn't stand alone by itself for funding. That's why Ted's saying what he's saying. We provide a general fund allocation to the department. Sometimes if there are a lot of people's, building is supported 100% by permits, for example, that offsets that general fund expenditure, makes that general fund available for other services within the program. So it's not just dependent on code enforcement itself, it's dependent on how everything else works in their budget, whether we'll be able to continue to fund those staff. We initially funded them from solid waste dollars with the guarantee from the state that the funding would be coming for the additional staff, and it was 3 additional staff, or 3 additional code enforcement officers. So we have the potential of losing 3 of those code enforcement officers, but along with the enforcement and the other things that happen within the other programs in the department that may offset the need to use the general fund allocation we gave them, then we're going to evaluate whether we can maintain them.
One of the things that we put in that BRIC grant that I was talking about earlier was for another code enforcement officer or building inspector. That one we know we did not get, but we're going to try again next year. So.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Yeah, Ted, can you expand a little bit on your comment there about psilocybin production and processing at the marijuana
I
production
glossed
site?
over that one, and I'm sorry. That is a good point. One of the things, and it's just is more of just a kind of interesting dynamic, is after psilocybin, we went through the land development ordinance on where you could have a service center, and obviously production you could have anywhere that was EFU or agriculture. We had never seen psilocybin out there at all, and it seemed after that came into play, we started seeing some psilocybin on marijuana sites, specifically the ones that were illegal. It was just more of an interesting note that we're seeing something that we had not seen before.
Any other questions for Dick? Yeah,
A
Colleen?
follow-up then, so are they cited?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
So, Mark, give
spring.
me just a second, please. So, we're at about 11:45, and at 12, the elected officials salary committee is scheduled to meet, and 3 of the members of this committee are the members of that salary committee. That's April Sevick and Matt Stevenson and myself. So we also have public comment scheduled before recess, so that we can attend that meeting. So I'm going to ask right now if we have anybody here who wishes to make public comment at this time. Okay, I do have, again, a statement to read on this subject. The Budget Committee encourages the public to submit comments in writing either by mail to 10 South Oakdale, Room 214, Medford, Oregon 97501, or email to boc-cao_admin@jacksoncounty.org. Written comment must be received by 12 p.m. on Thursday, April 18th, 2024, and all written correspondence must include the author's name and address. I have rules here for the public hearing, but seeing that there's no one who is going to give us comments at this time, I'm not going to read those. And Mark, now I'd be very happy to have you come up, but we have to be done by noon. Can we do that without cutting you short? Because I'd be happy to let you come back after the recess. All right, well, I don't want you to feel that we don't value your department or its efforts. As I recall, we've done this to you once before.
No problem. So I'll be brief then. So I'm Mark Decker, IT Director for the county. We run 2 programs. One is the Computer Replacement Fund, which is really just a financial vehicle for saving up for capital and infrastructure improvements that don't happen every year. They're not part of our annual operating budget, but they're things we do need to have funds for. And then the other is the IT program, which is basically IT. That's all the people and all the software and everything that makes the county run. So we're divided into various teams there. And our money mainly comes from, as you might expect, internal service charges. We are a service organization. IT's job is to help other departments do their jobs. So 93% of the revenue for IT comes from chargebacks to other departments. 7% of it comes from outside sources, primarily the land transaction fee, the GIS fee that's charged on recorded documents. So if you sell a property in Jackson County and you record the document of that sale, a small fraction of that fee goes to fund our GIS program and things like Property Data Online, which is the very popular part of our website where people can look up permit information and valuations and all kinds of things regarding real property. In terms of our budget itself, it's approximately 2/3 what we call basic charges. So this is the things we charge to departments for common services everybody uses, internet access, email, et cetera. And then about 1/3 of the department of the charges is for specific things. So if, for example, the ORCAT system, which is the taxation system used primarily by assessment, but also by taxation, only those departments pay for those particular services. In terms of prior year performance, so every year our primary metric, since we are a service organization, is a customer satisfaction survey. We ask every department these 2 questions. In general, are you doing a good job meeting my business needs, and do you respond quickly to my requests? And we turn that into this graph. We did a benchmarking process some years ago and came up with a yellow line here, which is basically kind of what's the industry average customer satisfaction for an organization with their IT department. And we set that as kind of the baseline. We like to be Lake Wobegon and have everything above average. So our goal is actually a pretty aggressive stretch goal. We aim for 95% customer satisfaction. And historically, we've been pretty close to that. We did experience a rough patch after the pandemic. We had a lot of staff turnover, as a lot of organizations did, and that hurt us on our delivery and caused some issues. But this last year, very proud of my team. We knocked it out of the park, actually greatly exceeded our stretch goal. So kudos to my team. They do a fantastic job, and very proud of that result. Last year we did a lot of stuff. A big one that was noticeable in public was we moved to the .gov domain for the county's website and the county's email. That's an initiative the federal government has been pushing very hard, and it's designed to create, to make government websites more credible and trustworthy, in that they're harder to impersonate by someone who wanted to set up a fake Jackson County website and try and trick the public using it. The .gov domain is very tightly controlled, and so if you go to a .gov website, you can trust that it really is a government website, not some fake. We also deployed a AI-powered threat detection and mitigation tool that basically watches the network all the time and looks for suspicious-looking behavior by workstations and can shut stuff down if it sees really bad behavior, or send an alert up to one of my staff. So that was a really nice way to move the program forward. We also did major software upgrades. E1 system, which is the financial system, some of our in-house things like the civil division system, the software we've written internally, we rewrote to use newer tools. So that was good. And also did some major network upgrades, which is not glamorous, and hopefully you don't even hear about it, and that means we did it right. So for next year, we've got an even more aggressive docket of upgrades happening. First, we're going to be going from Windows 10 to Windows 11 on all county PCs and implementing some additional workstation security controls at that time. The other big one, which has a really large budget impact, is the move to Microsoft 365, which is Microsoft's new licensing model. And it'll give us access to a lot of tools we haven't had before, like SharePoint and Teams and OneDrive and things like that. However, it also involves a much larger cost for Microsoft licensing. And this is something that both we want to do because it has benefits, but also Microsoft's kind of forcing us into it because they're discontinuing the old model, and we can't really use the kind of miserly model we've used before, where we just kind of very sparingly tasted Microsoft products. Now we really need to eat them with gusto. We're also going to be replacing the phone system and also doing some work to advance cybersecurity program maturity. So I think Matt, you'd actually mentioned last year some surprise that the county didn't have a full-time person devoted just to cybersecurity, as many organizations our size do, especially a complex organization like Jackson County. It is certainly the case that most large organizations will have what they call a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer, somebody who's got certifications in that area. I'm actually that person for Jackson County, and it's about 1/3 of my job. 5-6 years ago, it was about 15% of my job, and it just keeps growing because every year the threats keep getting bigger and harder. And so it's like it could easily be a full-time job or at least a half-time job. With these big projects that we got coming in the next year, I'm not going to be able to devote as much time to it. So we put $100,000 in the budget to specifically get some consulting resources in. We looked at the possibility of budgeting to hire such a person, but average CISO salary in the U.S. is about $230,000. So, and I'm not sure we really need a full-time person anyway, but I think we do need maybe about a half-time person worth of effort, specifically to move forward, taking things to the next level. So we've got good technical controls in place. You know, we've got strong technical standards. We do aggressive patch management. If a vulnerability is revealed, you know, we get it patched right away. We've got a really strong training program. We do end user training. Our click rates on simulated phishing campaigns are lower than the typical average. So we're doing all the right kind of block and tackle things. What's next, though, is we need to increase the maturity of that program to basically do more in the way of risk assessments, data classification, getting more policies and getting annual, like, continuous improvement cycle reviews for policies and procedures in place. So that's kind of the next level, and that's what we're hoping to get this additional resource in to do. So that's all I had, and if you have questions.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we are going to recess, and we'll be back at 1:30. Okay, let's call the committee back to order again, and first on the agenda is County Council. Joel, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Morris, members of the Budget Committee and Board of Commissioners. My name is Joel Betton. I'm before you as the County Council for Jackson County. I've been the County Council for about 10 years, so this is about the 10th time I've been up here. Here's our presentation for fiscal year 2024, 2025 and our proposed budget. Just for some background, County Council is the county's law firm, so we serve as the in-house dedicated advocates for the county's elected and appointed officials in their departments. Our goal is to provide cost-effective and effective legal services, including providing valuable solutions and alternatives while adhering to the highest ethical standards. And we try to provide more proactive advice and advocacy because we can provide long-term relationships. A lot of entities may have outside counsel where they only reach out to them when they have a specific legal question. Because we work for the county and we're in-house, we get to interact with our client representatives or the departments and elected and appointed officials on a daily basis, and that helps build that relationship and trust. So we provide legal advice, and we also advocate for the county's needs. We review the county's contracts and other transactions related to the county's business, and we attend all of the Board of Commissioners meetings and other committees and board meetings to ensure, to provide advice during the meeting and to help ensure compliance with the public meetings law. We represent the county in all litigation matters. Either most do 90% of our litigation is done in-house with in-house attorneys. Only when we have a situation where either we just have so much litigation that we don't have the resources internally to handle the matter, then do we hire outside counsel. Additionally, there sometimes becomes a matter that's so specialized that we don't have the knowledge in-house how to do it, and it doesn't make sense to develop it in-house because it'll be cheaper and more effective to hire someone who knows how to prosecute those type of cases. A good example is when we had the construction defect litigation related to the parking garage at HHS. Construction defect is a very specialized area of the law. We don't handle those cases very often or at all. That was the first one we've ever handled, and so it made sense to hire an outside attorney in those particular situations. We represent the county at administrative hearings, so LUBA appeals that come out of the county, if the county participates, we participate in those. Matters before BOLI, the Board of Labor and Industries, matters before ERB, the Employment Relation Board, and all the other administrative proceedings. We also advocate for the county in labor relations. I'm the, one of my many hats is I'm the chief negotiator for the county on behalf of when we're involved in collective bargaining agreements. And so myself and members of my staff are involved in every collective bargaining agreement negotiation. So we currently have 5 attorneys. County council is 0.5. That was a change made last year when half of my FTE came out of county administration when I took on the hat of senior deputy county administrator in addition to county council. And we currently have 4 senior assistant county councils who all have been here at least for 4 years, which is a long time for our county council's office, and provides a lot of that stability that I talked about that helps us form those long-term relationships. We have 2 admin professionals. There is a change in the FTE from the admin professionals. We have a program project coordinator and an administrative assistant. In the recent, I shouldn't say recently, in the past year, we've done some reorganization how risk is being handled by the county. So risk is handled by the county administration budget as opposed to county council's office. However, we've moved some of the functions of risk into the county council's office. So there's been a reduction in the county in the FTEs being paid for out of county council, and those FTEs have been paid for now out of the risk management budget. It hasn't added additional people. It's just changed how those people are being paid for. So our revenue resources, so we provide advice on and other non-litigation matters. We track our hours, so we allocate our hours. We don't have an hourly billing rate. So we take how many hours we provide advice, we track those to the half-hour increment, and then we add up all of those hours, and then we divide our budget based upon those hours to the percentage of each department that's talked to us. So if we have our budget and we've provided 10% of the advice that's come out of county council to a department, then that department is responsible for 10% of our budget, and similarly. And then on litigation matters, we track our hours, and then we do a chargeback to risk management in the same methodology for each specific case. And that helps with our compliance with our risk management requirements, because our cost towards defending cases counts towards our self-insured retention when it comes to risk before our excess insurance becomes available. So if we look at our revenue sources, the interdepartmental charges, the general fund charges, and the fiduciary charges, most of our interdepartmental charges are most of our revenue is from interdepartmental charges. So those are the Roads and Parks Department, assessor, those sort of the outward-facing operational departments. The general fund the general departments are those sort of central services or sheriff's office that's provided by general fund, and then fiduciary is those internal service departments. So currently we're proposing a $1,392,879 expenditure budget. It's an increase of 1.95% from last year. Personnel services, is an increase of only 1.67% from fiscal year 2023-24. And our materials and services are going up about 4.6% from 23-24. We're an office of lawyers and administrative assistants, so 90% of the money that we spend is on individual personnel expenses. Only 10% of our expenses are materials and services. One of the things we want to do, as I said, is cost efficiency. So we do a comparison of what would it cost if the county were to acquire similar lawyers from outside of the county. So if we look at high rate, so that would be myself and some of our senior people. If you're looking at Portland, the Portland rate that we found in looking at the bar exam is the average senior partner is charging about $1,150 an hour. They're charging about $600 an hour in Medford, and our charge is $196 an hour per county council. We don't have any current attorneys billing at the low rate, or what would be the low rate. That would be the assistant county counsel, which we don't have any of those FTEs currently. If we look at the average rate, it's about $401 in Portland, $281 in Medford, and we're charging about $154 as a chargeback for in-house. So we are providing, I believe, cost-effective, efficient representation to the county. So like I said, we also have fixed costs. So when we look at equivalent rates, if you hire outside counsel, you pay them by the hour no matter how many hours you work. We are fixed costs, we have salaried, and so every hour we work makes each hour cost a little bit less because we're dividing that cost over more hours. So it's more effective and efficient to hire us because we're paid a salary and we're not having to bill individuals, and our costs are not going up based upon just working more hours. So as I said, we have a savings of about $247 an hour potentially when we're looking at sort of those senior assistant county counsel rates. And if we're looking at sort of myself, it's almost $1,000 an hour cheaper than to hire a similar attorney up in Portland. So we have some strategic objectives. We're looking for quality of are people happy with our advice. That doesn't necessarily mean they agree with our advice. Frequently our clients don't like the advice that we give them, but are they happy and do they feel that we're providing good quality legal advice? Our goal is to hit about 90%. We've been trending on that goal and we're projecting this year to hit about 92%. We do a satisfaction. We talk to our clients to see how satisfied they are. We do a survey. Our goal is to get transactions out within 3 days. So if a contract comes to our office complete and ready to be reviewed and stamped as being sufficient, our goal is to get it through the office and to county administration for approval within 3 days. Right now we're getting about 90%. We're finding that more and more contracts are getting more and more complex and require more and more work, and so that's why they're taking a little bit longer to do. Also, the county's just sheer number of contracts is going up. We're not proposing to add staff, but that is something that we're doing. There's more work to do every day. And then in-house litigation, as I said, our goal is it's cheaper and we feel more effective because to handle things in-house, our goal is to handle things at 97%, and that's about where we are. So we're handling, right now off the top of my head, we only have one matter being handled by outside counsel. And that was a matter of we just didn't have the resources at the time that the case came in to assign it to an in-house attorney. Are there any questions?
Questions? Nope, I don't think so, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Good afternoon. Lovely assistant. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. We're going to start with our Human Service Partner grants, which I know that you're all familiar with because we've been doing these for years. As you may recall, last year we had decided that it was time for us to put these back out to bid, as they had not been out to bid for several years. So we started that process by actually coming up with what a definition of our safety net services would be for this round of applications. And so where we landed was the programs which intervene to provide critical needs to vulnerable individuals and families in Jackson County. At this time, the most vulnerable members of our community whose needs are not covered by existing programs are the children and the elderly. These areas where funding is most needed for these groups are legal services, support for abused persons, and support for elderly individuals living in rural areas of Jackson County. And that most of that was based off of our community needs assessment that we have spent the last couple of years on. So we sent these out for bid. We had 20 applications come back that we received from a variety of community service partners. We reviewed all the applications with the safety net services definition as already explained, and then the panel reviewed all of those according to that. So we had 6 people on our panel, and we have a total of 8 proposals that we're recommending to the Budget Committee for full funding. And here is that list. So as I said, we had 20 applicants. Some of these you will see are new to us. Others were existing ones before that will continue to get funding. I'll just highlight some of them. So the first one is Access, and that's their Rogue Power Packs. Those are for kids and families who are food insecure, and they send home food over the weekends and over holidays to ensure that those children have adequate food to eat during the time they're away from school. All of those qualify for free lunch in their school programming. And then the other ones that were existing, we already had one for the Center for Nonprofit. That's really providing legal services to elderly, primarily around rental and eviction issues that arise. The Children's Advocacy Center, the Children's Advocacy Center. I don't know why I couldn't spit that out. These dollars have historically paid for their doctor who does all of their forensic services and looking at abused kids, and then also runs the Fatality Review Board, which we serve on, and has no other source of funding. So that was another one that we would consider a safety net service. And then we do have some newer ones, including the foster grandparent program. The committee really felt like this was a double benefit because we had the kids that would be benefiting from that, as well as the older folks who serve in that role for foster grandparents, and it has really good outcomes, and we all know that kids need as many positive adults in their life as they can get. The other one that is new on here is the Golden Rule Reentry Program. This was one that we talked quite in depth about. Primarily, this is a program that helps individuals who are coming out of incarceration, prison, or jail and are trying to get their families back together and need employment, need housing, need services for their family members. And so this one is also being recommended for full funding. So as you can see, these total up to the $209,000 and $300. And that is what I am putting forth for your consideration. Yes, historically, we have asked a yearly account of how they've done those dollars. And for some of these newer ones, we will be reviewing them more frequently just to offer technical assistance, and because they'll be new to us, to make sure that we are getting what they applied for and that we're helpful in making them successful.
Intend these awards to last? So obviously these amounts are annual amounts. Are you thinking that you're going to hopefully not go out to bid every year or every 5 years, or
My goal would
the
be,
Budget Committee asks you to, or what are your thoughts there?
my goal would be not to do it every year. It's a big lift. But I think what I'd like to do is get it in the same cycle as we do our community health assessment, because that's really where we can see where those fall, and those are between every 3 to 5 years, depending. So they're now lined up with them, and so that's how I'd like to continue, keep it going.
For me, that would be good. We went, gosh, might have been 10 to 15 years when this was originally done.
14.
So.
Yep.
Oh, well, I wasn't far
You're
off
pretty
then.
good.
Yeah, right.
I think some direction when you deliberate from the budget committee, it might be something you deliberate on, because there used to be kind of a struggle about these funds, whether they would continue to exist or not. Then there was agreement they would be frozen and not increase. So over time, essentially, they would become irrelevant. We do have shortfalls in general fund elsewhere while we're funding outside agencies. I know these offset costs that we might otherwise incur. Since it is an annual funding mechanism, and it's really just, this is only done at the direction of the budget committee. It's not a department initiated process. So I think you guys might want to, maybe not this year, but at some point have a discussion about how you would like to see it done as a committee.
I would absolutely agree. I just wanted to know her opinion about how often she thought it should be done.
I was trying to take the heat off of her.
Right.
I didn't even feel the heat.
That's why she earns the big bucks, so I've been told myself today, so.
Stacy?
Yeah.
The drop-in center, the Golden Rule Reentry, tell me just a little bit more. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, they are new, and they really are focused on individuals that are coming out of prison.
So drop-in meaning you
That
just...
they can drop in for resources. They'll be able to be hooked up with a navigator, somebody that can help them and their family get reestablished through housing, food, whatever benefits they might be available for.
They can just show up.
Yeah.
It's just a drop in.
So somebody just sits there and has all that knowledge?
They have staff and they have other programming as well. So
It's a pretty big organization.
they're fairly new, but they're gaining momentum for sure.
Thank you.
Where is it physically located?
That is a good question. I don't remember, but it's in Medford.
This is in no way similar to or affiliated with the old Medford Drop?
No, that was for youth.
Yeah, okay.
So no, that one still exists, but it's for youth.
So as you mentioned, this was a big lift, and thank you, and a special thanks to the members of your review committee who spent the time to go through these proposals and help determine what their recommendations would be. Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
extend my thanks to them as well.
I will do that.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this? Okay.
West Main, first floor.
Thank you, Google.
Go ahead.
221.
Okay, are we ready? The next.
Yes.
All right. Now for the least complicated budget of county. So Health and Human Services, this is our proposal for our fiscal year 24-25 budget. Our mission continues to be to plan, coordinate, and provide public services that protect and promote the health and well-being of our county residents. So you can see these are our two pie charts. One was from our last year. On the left is the adopted budget, operating budget from last year, and this is the proposed one for this year. You can see that some of those have changed a little bit in number, but not by much. And really primarily the places that it has changed is around some of the dollars that we have received from federal and state dollars. They continue to roll forward as they try to fix various holes. And then the other has gone down a little bit. That was really primarily to a variation of donations and bequests and those kind of things meeting their end. And then also the fees and billings have gone down somewhat, as well as our general fund has gone down a little bit as well for this year. All right, so here are our highlights and challenges. So in 23-24, the adopted FTE was 228.70. And then this year, we are requesting 235.35. Those are positions within developmental disabilities. The state continues to provide a lot of money through that budget, and every year we've been able to add new staff as we continue to provide those services to more and more people. And then the other 1.65 position is really for mental health, again, as they continue to add dollars and requirements for us. We need staff to be able to do that. So the highlights really are the continued growth in the number of individuals served through developmental disabilities over the past 5 years, which is why there's been such an influx of workers that have been added to the developmental disabilities budget. We've been able to expand to a mobile crisis response for mental health with coverage from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. that is actually in-person, mobile, with people responding to folks 7 days a week. And then, as I already mentioned, the All In for Health community health assessment, we were really the backbone agency for that. We invested a lot of time and effort on this from the staff's perspective, as well as across the board from other divisions besides public health, just because it was a very thorough and intensive process, and again, really has great outcomes and really has been able to lead us in some of the areas we need to head into. As you know, some of our challenges really are around the animal shelter, ongoing resource needs, and a need for a new facility. And then our continued workforce shortages in the healthcare related fields. Those would include nurses, as well as social workers, therapists, our case management team, nurses on both sides of mental health and public health. So those continue to be some of our larger gaps, although we have been starting to get some good applicants lately. But it's hard to do work when you don't have bodies to do the work. All right, so animal services, we are up to 16 full-time employees. We do not get any state or federal revenue for that. The purpose of that program is to protect human and animal health and safety, increase responsible pet ownership, and return stray domestic animals to owners or find new homes for the adoptable ones. I really just primarily gave you the numbers of dogs that we handled during FY 22-23, which was 1,515 dogs. And you can see that the cats are pretty low in relative years, and that has really primarily been to resource. We have not been able to accommodate many cats because we've had so many dogs that we have needed to accommodate, and our space is limited. And just to note that we're not mandated to provide services to cats, and we are to dogs, so that has been our priority. Already mentioned developmental disability services. They're going up to 60.30 FTE. They're 100% state funded. Again, they have come up from 40 positions to 59, and then the 6.30, that missing number really is around additional support staff that they've had to add to be able to accommodate all the needs for that. And again, it's all state funding. They have been able to serve close to, oh my gosh, why can I not see? 1,790 individuals this past year in 2022, and that also includes those in the brokerages. So there's two different types of providers. There's us as the county that provide case management, but consumers have choice. They can go through a brokerage as well, but we do the eligibility and determine the eligibility. And we continue to see a 1.52% growth in total individuals served over the year. So the direct email for DD eligibility applications on our county website continues to make applying for services more accessible and easier for our community, which is one of the reasons we think that has gone a little bit smoother, and then also being able to increase the folks that can actually do the assessment makes it so we don't have such long lists of people waiting to get in to determine whether they're eligible. The next one is our environmental public health program. So 7.2 FTE, 10% of those dollars are state and federal revenue. And this really ensures the health and safety of the community through education and enforcement of public health, regulations pertaining to food, pool, and lodging facilities, as well as public drinking water systems, wood stoves, and open burnings. So this past year, they were able to accomplish 5,467 food handlers permits were tested for and received. And in 2023, there were 1,642 completed inspections, representing about 78% of what we normally would do. However, we were down an FTE throughout that year, and so we did not meet what we typically do, which is right around 100%. Now that we are fully staffed, we anticipate that we'll be able to meet those higher numbers in 2024. Mental health, 89.95 FTE, 75.58% are state and federal revenues. We provide medically necessary mental health services to eligible people in Jackson County with severe or chronic psychological or emotional problems. As I mentioned before, we have gone mobile, and so Jackson County Mental Health served a total of 2,682 unique individuals in FY 22-23, dropping slightly, just a few, by 82 for the 23 calendar year. So if you compared fiscal to calendar, that's not a big dip in those services, but really have tried to up our game to be able to provide services as people call, walk in, or ask for services if they're appropriate for the services we continue to provide. The behavioral health workforce emergency is impacting everybody all around the state. It's not just Jackson County. It's all of our partners who provide mental health services, and substance use disorder services continues to have challenges in hiring. And it really, for us, our biggest issues are the crisis workers and programs working with our justice systems partners, and we really have this shortage around master's level therapists or social workers. So even though we're understaffed, the Jackson County Mental Health Mobile Crisis Team continues to increase the number of mobile dispatches month by month. The team achieves this by prioritizing staffing at peak hours as needed, and again, really getting the word out to folks that we are able to go out in two-man teams to really be able to respond to those crises, and that includes weekends that we're able to do that in person. Public health has 45.25 FTE, 68.7% of that is state and federal revenue. They carry out the programs as mandated by the local public health authority and by the Oregon Health Authority. In 2023, public health administered 5,016 immunizations. Of those total immunizations, 1,470 were COVID-related vaccinations, and then that team also issued 1,406 exclusion orders for students attending certified daycares, preschools, and K through 12 schools that were not in compliance with the Oregon school immunization laws. That's a big lift, and that is a lot of kids to do that for. For FY 22-23, 1,347 non-COVID communicable disease cases were reported, and 146 of the communicable disease outbreaks, including COVID, were investigated. So that team has been very busy as well. In 2023, 7,199 women, infants, and children participated in the WIC program, which represents 4,194 families. Of those families, 77% were working families, which is about 2% higher than last year's numbers. And then there were $3,674,693 federal WIC dollars spent by the participants at local stores in Jackson County, as well as $34,360 to the Farm Direct program, which really is for farmers markets, and those go to local farmers. And again, WIC continues to be one of the higher performing programs in the state. Veteran Services, 6.0 FTE, 33.7% state funded, no federal funding. And as you know, this is really a program to assist veterans, their children, and surviving widows with obtaining benefits from the federal government. So some of our highlights from 22-23 are 4,842 interviews were conducted by our Veteran Services officers. That's quite a few individuals. Awards for pension and service-connected compensation were $1,195,612. And then in addition to that, there was $3,647,700 retroactive pay for veterans in Jackson County during that year. So that, again, that's a lot of people, and that luckily that division has been fully staffed for a while, which is why we've been able to increase those numbers. And this is a slide that I just added because we get a lot of questions around it, and it is about the opioid settlement funding. There's one FTE in this program, and these are all settlement dollars from the opioid lawsuit settlement. And you can see that there's some highlights down there of things that we have done in the past year and that we will continue to work on. The hiring of one FTE program coordinator to oversee the planning and implementation of those prevention and treatment and recovery efforts across the county. If any of you have seen the If Not Now, When campaign on KOBI or on social media, that is through these dollars really trying to help educate people so that they have conversations with their kids and their loved ones around fentanyl and overdoses. Expansion of syringe exchange services across the county. Contracts with local hospitals for system navigators to assist in discharge planning, and resource connection for individuals that are admitted anywhere in the hospital, primarily due to their opioid use, so that we try to keep the numbers down of people who are dying by overdose. And then we are continued to do planning efforts to begin medication-assisted treatment in the jail, and we do that with our partners through Community Justice, the Sheriff's Office, and the jail. And there you go, last one. Questions?
Yeah. Questions?
I've got a quick one.
Sure.
The exclusion orders for vaccines, do you have to be ill to get an exclusion order, or what does that cover?
It's really based on either religious belief or medical belief around why they don't have their kids immunized.
Yeah, thank you.
Has that number, I don't know if you know this historically, has that number increased, let's say, since COVID? But prior to COVID, was it a much lower number and then maybe increased because of some vaccine hesitancy?
Jackson, do you have any sense?
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we're going to recess. Oh, no, we're not. Sorry. We're going to open it for public comment. Do we have anybody who wants to? You can just raise your hand if you want. Okay. I'll call on you in just a second. Is there anybody else? Okay. We do have rules for public hearings, and unfortunately, I'm going to read them. First one, only the chairperson or member of the Budget Committee may question a speaker. There will be no interruption of a speaker from the audience and no debates on the floor. Applause is not permitted, please. A speaker may criticize or support a proposal, but the speaker shall not argue with another speaker directly. A person wishing to speak shall sign in or raise his or her hand and wait to be recognized by the chairperson. After being recognized, the speaker shall state his or her name and an address before proceeding with his or her statement. The duration of any comment is limited to 5 minutes and should cover factual information relevant to the budget. This is the Budget Committee, and I appreciate your comments being specific to the budget and our process. And the last one, repetition by a speaker shall please be avoided. Kathleen, I assume you track the time, the 5-minute time, or you'll do that? Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure somebody was going to. All right. You may come forward and state your name and address.
Want me to do that first? Good afternoon, Laura Ahern, 8595 Upper Applegate. I was here a year ago. You said that's unusual. Public doesn't come to these hearings. And I came to speak about something I think we all still agree on. We need to replace the animal shelter. The rest of my comments and the list of expert resources I brought last year would remain essentially unchanged. So I'm going to just leave that for your records here this time and talk about some new things that have happened this week. When you opened this hearing last week, you had a video, and it included 2 testimonials about how Jackson County has delivered over $300 million in capital projects to our citizens without burdening the taxpayer. Until now, we've gotten to the animal shelter, and there's a call for a tax. Now, there's nothing in this budget, I think there should be, that would move us the next step forward to actually planning for the animal shelter. But there is a $62 million pandemic response center. It was suggested last Tuesday that now that we have the pandemic response center and we need to build some courtrooms, we no longer can afford to build an animal shelter. Up until then, the message to the community had been we can afford to build, we just can't afford to operate. Who made that decision, if it's really true? All that you commissioners have done so far is approve a $25,000 pre-planning contract for that pandemic center. I don't think you consciously chose, no, we're going to make it an either-or proposition. I think, Commissioner Roberts, that that's the kind of question that should go to the voters if, in fact, we're facing that dilemma. I know that you don't want to lose those ARPA funds, but maybe they're a poison pill. Have you properly looked at the cost of that money if, in fact, you're depriving us an opportunity to achieve what is universally agreed, I believe, to be a clear countywide need for a new animal shelter? I understand you're only mandated to deal with dogs. There are a lot of things in this budget that aren't mandated. A lot of the veteran services, which I know are very dear to Mr. Dodder. I understand it's not mandated that we pay your health insurance premiums or PERS contributions. Those wonderful grants for human partners, not mandated. So there are a lot of choices that need to be made. And I think our community wants us to make the best choice to provide a good, sound animal shelter to meet our current needs right now. There have been some allusions to Marion County, that Marion County only has a dog control facility. Maybe we'll end up with only that if we don't approve a service district. You know what? I think we need to look seriously at Marion County because it is very similar to what I was suggesting last year, that we have county focused on dog control and the sheltering be handled by a nonprofit. In Salem, by Marion County, a mile away from the county facility is the beautiful Oregon Humane Society campus. The dogs that we can't care for here in Jackson County, they're going to Oregon Humane Society. And that campus has all of the non-discretionary but so badly needed services that our community needs. Spay and neuter, behavioral training, outreach, wonderful support from their volunteers. So I am very open to looking at that model, as well as the special service district, as well as the many other funding models we might want to consider, but we need to build community support and we need to have more upfront funding, planning. I think we're going to get there. Let's see, did I have anything else to say here? Well, I know for me, it is critical to be in a civil and livable community to have good animal welfare services. We heard at the Animal Control Advisory Committee meeting yesterday that feral cat advocacy is really stepping up to make up the unmet needs that we're now facing because the county shelter isn't accepting cats. And so encouraging those kinds of entities, but particularly getting them to the table now so that we can make sure our community's resources are best employed. That $4 million a year for the service district tax, maybe we can do so much more with it if we have a cooperative collaboration between county and all of our leading animal welfare organizations like Feral Cat Advocacy, planning to handle 75 cats in their shelter, So Humane, FOTUS, and so many more that are very up and coming. So I just encourage you to support your community because we really are excited about exploring our options and making the right decision.
Timing is everything.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right. All right. Are there any other people who would like to come forward for comment? Okay. I have my other statement to read. For those of you who have been here all day, this is the third time. The Budget Committee encourages the public to submit comments in writing, either by mail to 10 South Oakdale, Room 214, Medford, Oregon 97501, or email to BOC_CAO_admin@jacksoncounty.org. Written comment must be received by 12 p.m. on Thursday, April 18th, 2024. On all written correspondence must include the author's name and address. Budget Committee does encourage comments, and we appreciate the comments we already had and any that might come in through the mail. We will recess till Thursday, April 18th at 9 a.m., where we will finish hearing from departments. We will then hear from the Salary Review Committee, and then we will enter into deliberations, and ultimately, our goal is to approve the budget. Thank you. We're in recess.